Is it me?
Yeah.
Okay, hi, welcome everybody. We're gonna make some quick adjustments to our agenda today, after a brief discussion. So we're going to be presenting Article 8, Article 20, on our counters, and then Article 21. I think we'll probably not need a break before going to you for your Article 13 counter presentation. At which point we're going to go into caucus. We're going to move HSD's initial proposal on financials, the financial presentation on Articles 10 and 12 to after lunch, probably sometime around 2:30, so that we have more members who will be available and present for that in the afternoon, and be able to potentially come back before that, after a lunch caucus, for counter proposals, in the early afternoon. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yeah, that sounds
Okay,
good.
great. We will move to Article 8, yeah? Great.
Okay. I think we're all the way around on Article 8. So I wanted to start by saying thank you to Martha and Hannah for meeting with us to work on some of this proposed language that we have here in C2. I think that was great collaborative work here, and we have a proposal here that I hope will work for both parties, that kind of meets the information that we are needing here, but also hopefully within the constraints of what is possible for HR. So in C2, we have within 10 working days of a posted position being filled, the district shall provide the union with the names of all applicants who applied for the open position, and if they were interviewed, the name of the successful applicant, their internal or external status, and the salary placement. And sorry, I skipped right over B, but we did accept your language proposal in B, understanding there may be some constraints with the job alert system, but we believe it is your intention to provide internal and external applicants with all the information that they need to apply for jobs. So hopefully daily, weekly job alerts, yeah. And then did you want to say, is there anything else I'm missing on first page? I don't think so. Yep.
Okay.
That I think is, yep.
So in 4 on additional and temporary hours, we had a discussion about this, and we're kind of going back to some of our initially proposed language here. The reason is we're really feeling like we want our members' experience, their years of service to the district, to be honored. We feel like it's a significant factor. And the language that we're proposing here around additional and temporary hours, excluding limited student support time, and using the wording around current qualified and available employees, we feel like offers you the flexibility to do what you need to do. But when there aren't any factors in place, that longevity, that seniority be the factor. And we kind of want to have that discussion with you again. We would be curious to know why longevity shouldn't be a factor in these decisions when some other thing like qualification or availability isn't a factor.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how you parse out qualified and available and how broadly that's defined. I think last time, and I invite our supervisors to help me remember some of the examples we gave where perhaps we had somebody who just had kind of a proven track record working well with a student or similarly situated students, and we were wanting to put that student in a good spot. So you know, they may not be the more senior person, you know, does that mean, because the more senior person might be minimally qualified. Our experience has been that the less senior person has demonstrated like exceptional qualification in that area. It just seems, it's a hard one to think like, we wouldn't put the best possible person with that student. You know what I mean? And so I guess it depends on what qualified means. If it's like all things being equal, the more senior person would get the hours. To me, that's different than they are technically available and meet minimum qualifications. So to me, those are two different concepts, right?
That's very understandable. I think that we have defined qualified and available pretty broadly to want to encapsulate that. And I think every time we've had an example come up, we've said, yes, that would fall under our definition of qualified and available.
Mhm.
But having said that, we would be happy to see language from you that does what you need around qualified and available. And that makes sense, Brian, what you said. It was not it was our intention that all things being equal, not just the meeting of minimum qualifications.
Okay.
So if you want to come back to us with language on that, I think we would be happy to see it. I think that all things being equal, the experience and service to the district for our members should be a factor.
Yeah, I think that helps for our conversation about it. So.
Got a question in regards to when you talk about a person working with a select student. Like in our situation, we had no select student basically.
Mhm.
Okay. If you were at Liberty, you would, because that's your critical care, feeding tubes, all of that. I get that, but in my situation at Glencoe, we all are equal because the district took away the different levels. All right, of classification. So now everybody is an SEA and everybody, quote, should be qualified in that position. You know, like for me, this is my 10th year. I just got a half hour. So you're saying, from what I hear, and I could be hearing it wrong, it took me 10 years to get qualified to get a half hour.
Yeah, I don't know what your individual circumstances are, so I can't comment on, I guess what I'm saying is when you say that, you know, everybody's equal, you're all in the same job class and everybody's equal. I guess what I'm saying is we typically don't view every employee as having the exact same experiences, capabilities, skill set, skill levels. I think, you know, depending on what the individual needs are of a situation, there may be one employee who has demonstrated a particular skill set that makes them perhaps best suited for whatever this need is that's coming online.
But that's not defined under job description.
The job descriptions usually, hey, Hannah, do you know why that thing?
It's because it's using airtime, so it's just glitching a little bit, sorry.
It's not your fault.
That's a flashing idea.
Plug,
Yeah, it's like every time it happens, it's what?
Don't
mind it.
It's out of my control.
It's
wicked.
Yeah, sorry, that was just kind of. That's just- I'm trying to think of where I left off that part of the conversation. I think I was saying that. You asked me a question after I said that we don't see all of our employees necessarily being exactly identical or equal in skill sets and experience and things like that.
The job description.
Oh, yeah, the job description, I mean, is pretty broadly stated. It's not comparative analysis between two employees. It's just a set of minimum factors or qualifications that somebody has to meet, but it wouldn't necessarily say that one person is more or less well suited for a situation. It's just, it's the minimum expectations that have to be met, right?
I get that, but if you have lumped as, if SEAs are lumped as one, where, it used to be three divisions, you know, a couple years back, there's no way that I feel you can qualify somebody if we're all doing the same thing.
It does speak to, essentially, in our proposal, we're looking to eliminate any kind of arbitrary sorts of decision-making, right? The qualified, available, like, those things aren't arbitrary. And what we would hope with, in an agreement on this language is that we get to a place where we can say, what was it? And you say, here's what it was. And there was this qualification, or there was this availability issue. Or we didn't have any of that, so we went to the contract and used seniority, right? The decisions getting made for arbitrary reasons, we, in some cases, just don't result in our members being honored for the service that they provided to the community.
Sure. Sorry, Mark.
Can I add something? The way I'm trying to make sense of it is I completely see your side. But it just makes me wonder, this language makes it where as a principal, then I'm limited, or as a supervisor, and it may not. For example, the qualification, if I have a student that needs the extra dismissal time, and I already have a person that it's newly hired, working with a student for 4 hours at the end of the day, and I just got a half an hour extra, do I go to the seniority versus continuing that?
So I wanted to invite Jessica to speak on this, because she brought up a really good point about this when we were discussing this topic.
Back when I was an SEA, I would attend some classified listening sessions, and it came up that in another article in our contract under reduction of hours, you can't reduce an employee's hours below their benefit level. So our most senior employees have benefits at 6 hours, and our less senior employees have benefits at 7. So in the past, if hours have been reduced, it's actually been our senior employees who have been subject to that reduction just because their benefit level hours are lower. So I think we just wanted, in putting this language in, also to honor their time and their service, and to have kind of, not even a bonus, but just a chance to maybe regain some of those hours that they may have lost just due to that circumstance that's come up in our contract. And I know that was a situation that happened in my building at the time, when I was a less senior employee at 7 hours and a more senior employee lost time due to that provision.
I think that what we can look for language where it's also student-based and the needs of the student, probably, but and see how, I don't know, we'll talk about it.
On your example, just so I can make sure I understand it, it's based on the fact that those more senior people were legacied in, and they had that broader, they achieved full insurance benefit with a lower number of hours, correct?
Correct, yeah, when they were hired, the benefit level was full benefits at 6 hours.
Yeah,
Whereas that changed before I was hired, and then there's that other provision, I can't remember which article it is.
so a less senior person could not be reduced because it would change their benefit level. The more senior person had a broader range that they could be moved within
Correct.
without impacting their benefit level.
Correct, yeah,
Gotcha.
so they ended up with the reduction of hours due to no issue with their performance at all,
Right.
just building needs.
Got it.
So this is one way, one mechanism that we could like reintroduce some equity in that for our more senior employees.
Yeah, thanks for that one.
Here's a question. As I'm reading this language, where do you see like attendance, employees' attendance falling in to this language? Like, we had 2 people that were equally qualified, but the senior person had attendance issues. Like, how do you see part of this? I'm just curious, as I'm thinking through something.
And certainly, you know, you have a process for dealing with that is separate from this part of the contract. You know, if someone has, let's say, for instance, someone has filed a FEMLA OFLA for an intermittent leave. That may then be an availability issue. That would mean that they couldn't take some additional hours because you need someone who's going to be a little bit more stable, and this person has an intermittent leave filed, and you're just not sure, you know, they're gonna be there on that given day, right? I think that would speak to an availability issue that would fall underneath our proposal.
I think that, again, I think this helps clarify sort of where you guys are at with this. I think it gives us some room for some discussion.
That's great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
And the rest of this article, we are in agreement. At this point.
Accepting changes in F and the small change that we made together in G2 as well as 4.
Got it.
I will say that for formatting on 4, we spread it back out with the ABC, and that isn't totally in response to the HSD proposal last, like it would change formatting somewhat, just as a note that for as proposed on May 14th, just reduce it back down to the 1 paragraph and earnings. So I don't know that.
Got it.
It's worth noting,
Okay.
It was
Yeah.
spread out and changed
and yeah.
functionally. The language
Yes,
changed.
yes, so
Yeah.
just A, B, and C are different.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent.
We don't have 20 yet, so we're gonna do 21, and then we'll do 20 when we have that. Yeah.
If the strobing were just in tune to the music.
We get some house music going, I really don't want it. Did that make it all the way around?
This is your initial on this one,
On
right?
21, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So our proposed changes to 21 are really about increasing access to the classified professional improvement fund for our workers. We had a discussion about whether it was the number of employees who access it or the amount that they are able to access. And we feel that it is both, that we're looking for here. So we are proposing an increase both in the pool amount. So it is currently 40,000. We're proposing an increase to 100,000. And that is because we're also proposing an increase in the amount that employees can request. Oh, we made a mistake. We didn't finish all of our things here.
All the formatting?
All of the. I'll get to it. Anyway, we missed a spot here. But we're also proposing that, employees can request up to $2,000. That was. Currently, employees are able to request 1,000 and then an additional 1,500 or an additional 500 after June 1st. So we're proposing that you see the part we missed. So we're proposing that they are able to apply for 2,000 and then an additional 500 after June 1st. So it would be a total of 2,500, which is the part that we missed here, which I can make that change and send it over. And the reason for that change is simply the increase in cost for continuing education. There are a lot of employees who access this fund for certifications or conferences, and they don't access it to like the maximum $1,000 or $1,500. But there are employees who are seeking continuing education and they're accessing this for college level courses. And that's more than $1,000 for one college level course. So even to submit for reimbursement, this is more than some employees can afford. And so we like this to cover the cost of at least one college level class. And then again, we want more employees to be able to access this. We think this is a benefit to our employees and a benefit to the district when our employees come back with these educational credits. Down in C, we have just a wording change here that we felt like was good clarification. Thank you to the people on our team who are good with wording. And then down in D, we had some discussion about training that is offered outside of our employees' contracted time. And whether that is required or not. So there was concern about employees being called into work over the summer or during breaks and being required to attend training during that time. And so our language in D1 is that training should be offered during that time, but training that is required for an employee to work should be provided during their contracted time. And so our proposal in D1 is D1 and D2, employees shall not be required to attend training outside of contracted hours. And then finally in G, we had a robust discussion, and I'd invite our team and anybody who works in that Title I to pitch in on this. We had some discussion about the difficulty of hiring and finding jobs in Title I locations and access to highly qualified testing, and how it would be a benefit to staff who would be interested in potentially transferring into those positions to have robust access to highly qualified testing opportunities, should they be interested in that. And so the proposal in G, upon request, the district shall provide highly qualified testing opportunities for any interested classified employee. Upon successful completion of the test, employees shall be offered reimbursement for testing fees from the Classified Professional Improvement Fund. I mean, currently the cost for that, the testing fee is $60, and that is out of pocket for the employee, so they would be reimbursed if they were to complete the test successfully. Does anybody want to chime in on me?
I did want to say, we did notice that schools, the Title I schools are not allowed to pay for that testing, but this would be from the Professional Development Fund, so it would be something that would be a benefit to the employees, but also to the district to have more people on that highly qualified list. And it's also part of why we're asking for an increase, so that somebody could perhaps do the highly qualified testing and also take a class in the same year.
We do already reimburse for highly qualified testing.
Great.
For one test, one round.
And one functional benefit that came up during our discussion is that for lateral transfers, that would have to be within a Title I school to another Title I school unless you have more people on the bank of highly qualified. So then if this was offered before that February cutoff date where you can apply for the lateral transfer, then you have, more mobility for that kind of thing. Not that we want a lot of lateral transfers, but then it wouldn't be it's not a job application moment for that, where you'd have that active, I want to apply at this Title I school, so I will also do that. So, just a thought.
I just had a couple of questions, and some of them I think is probably data that we control, so ask Michelle. Do we know what the current, is our $40,000 dollar fund being used up currently?
No.
Well,
Go ahead. I mean, I remember looking at the numbers and I think 2 years out of the last 4 was awfully close and so close that it may not have been usable at the end. I mean, I don't know that maxing it out was something that was necessarily possible.
Yeah,
last year it was within $70 of the limit. And,
Yeah.
that's all I'm gonna say at the bargaining table right now.
And I don't know that we have any data about unfulfilled requests that would have gone over and above.
yeah,
what we have
There
access-
should be an opportunity for if there are additional funds that are left over, there should be an opportunity for staff to make extra requests for funds at the end of the year.
And if I may share a personal anecdote, I've been interested in taking American Sign Language classes at VCC. But I would need to take those during the summer because I don't have time during the school year and the money's always gone at that point. So, maybe I'm doing the process wrong, but my understanding is that there's never been money when I've asked about that fund being depleted, it's been depleted.
So Tiffany, that might just be a timing thing because it should reset on July 1st. So perhaps by the completion of your class, it's been replenished.
Okay.
Yeah, so that might be a timing issue.
But it does speak to the overall, like, at some point, there isn't money left, and we do have members who are looking to use it. So, but certainly, we would be happy to see more robust data from you on that. We would love that data to include, how many requests are put in and how many are potentially denied, or how many are partially filled, that sort of thing.
I think my follow-up question, maybe this is for Michelle, so that last line of the paragraph that starts, employees may initially apply, unused professional fund dollars shall be added to the subsequent years. Is that is this a continuously rolling fund? So under the current language, there's 40,000 and 20,000 is unused. So next year there's 40,000 more and then 20,000 is added to the fund. And then if 20,000 isn't used that year, does the fund just keep growing?
The way it's currently written, it would.
Yeah.
It sounds like we came really close last year and I haven't looked at the current, you can see.
Yeah.
What's gonna be, but
My only comment would be, I would like to look at usage because this is more than a doubling of the fund. And if you had like significant money rolling forward each year, you could get to the point where you had like $300,000 sitting around in this fund that was never getting, it's kind of a waste of district resources to keep having a fund grow that doesn't get exhausted. And so you've got this fund sitting over here. It'd be a shame to be like laying off people while we had a fund of $400,000 sitting around. And again, that's an extreme example of probably over time. So I question the more than doubling of the fund combined with the unlimited rollover of the fund and what effect that would be. But I do hear your intent, which is you want greater access to professional development. So I think looking at what our usage has been and saying, what is a reasonable level to have here that gets people the professional development that they need. I understand that point. I think we share that interest too, in people having continued education and growth and things like that. So I think seeing what our usage has been, if there's any other information, I was trying to read your face, or it looked like maybe there was something behind the scenes info that you didn't want to share during bargaining. I don't know.
Well, I don't know if you want to share it during
No.
bargaining, right?
I just mean if you want to, give us any of that on the side, that'd be fine too.
Sure.
But because I do want to understand what the issue is, that will help us respond, but I don't want to bring individual names or circumstances or anything.
I think part of doubling the fund is if you double I think another interesting point for your team to consider would be when people access that fund, are they accessing it for a partial amount? Or are they accessing it for the full amount?
Sure.
At what level are they accessing this? So if we're, if people are gonna be accessing $2,000 of this every year, and then we keep the fund at $40,000, that severely limits the number of
It
people
would.
who are then able to access.
Yeah, I
that.
agree with you. That
And
would.
so, but at the same time, getting access to a college level education is extremely expensive.
Mhm.
So to provide that level of access, we would need to increase the level of the fund. So
Yeah.
I think it was kind of juggling the two interests that we have, which is on the one hand, we want people to have access to these college level courses, which even one course, even like an ASL course or a Spanish course, which we talked about, like how those, or Vietnamese, like these are benefits to the district when people obtain this education. We want them to have that level of access. But we don't want to cut off people who want to, oh, I want to take this, I want to go to this weekend conference, or I want to take this online certification that's maybe $50. Both things need to exist in the same ecosystem. We need to be able to provide for both of those things functionally, and that's kind of where this proposal, where that came from.
Yeah, no, definitely understand that. I think it's gonna be a matter of meeting supply and demand.
There's certainly a subset of people who probably aren't using the fund because they don't have enough out-of-pocket money and the amount itself isn't sufficient to cover what they want to do, and so they're just not doing that. So in increasing the amount, we also think that will maybe increase the number of people taking it, which we do want. I think to speak to your rollover issue, I do think the intention in the status quo language on rollover is just that it accommodates a kind of ebb and flow
Sure.
from year to year.
Yeah,
So if you feel like we're going down a good path of expanding this fund for its use, and that's something that is of mutual benefit, maybe there's like a cap that makes some amount of sense.
yeah, that's a
You know,
good,
so we certainly don't want the district to have a fund of $500,000 that can't be used in the classroom.
yeah, that makes sense. That is something for us to definitely talk about. I do think we have a mutual interest on this one. I do think making continuing education accessible to people is important. And I know it is to the district, so yeah, and I do understand the point about if I'm not gonna use even my $1,000 if my out-of-pocket is gonna be another $4,000 or something like that. So I get where you're going with that.
And
Sorry.
yeah, another benefit that we discussed in our conversation preparing this was also, I'm not sure in the hiring process that professional development ever comes up presently. But with a more robust fund, with greater funds added, that could be a differentiator between other districts in the area and ourselves. If folks say, oh, this is a forward-thinking district that's thinking about, they not only want to hire me, but they also want to provide opportunities for me to grow in my skills and abilities, that could be a perk in terms of HSD becoming a destination district.
Thanks.
Of course.
Down in section D, I don't know what level of training ends up being required outside of the contract hours, so I don't know what the experience has been.
That is one of the questions that I had, so currently transportation, right, we have a lot, drivers especially have a lot of required courses they have to take. So to make it easier for our staff, many years ago, we started doing those in-house, but it does require us to do them this summer. So is that part of this? Is that you're saying that in your proposal, is you're thinking that transportation could not then hold those courses in the summer?
So that they're being required to come in during the summer or during
Right,
some
'cause
kind
the
of
only
break that's
time
not a contracted day.
Correct, because it's the only time during the course of the school year that we can get those in.
in our proposed language, there would be no prohibition against offering them off contract during the summer, on spring break, there wouldn't be any prohibition. It's just that that would not be required of the employees that, let's say, for example, an employee needed first aid and there was first aid on July 8th or in the whole series, but they were going to be gone, that they wouldn't be required to attend that they would have the opportunity per other contract language to do it on their own time and then be reimbursed for the cost, go to another certified first aid provider, do it on their own time. And then while they wouldn't be paid for it, they would get reimbursed for the cost of that training.
So what would be the mechanism then for like, do we have to account for those hours? Because those hours go towards your license, where you're required to have X number of classroom hours to renew and that kind of stuff. So kind of what would be the mechanism then for our department then to track those hours that you took somewhere else?
Well, I did this one time when I was not available during the time the first aid was offered. I went down to what was formerly Tuality and American Heart Association first aid training. And so I got the certification, which where the card and the number of hours turned that into the trainers. The trainers then logged both the hours as well as the certification in my training hours so that it was accounted for properly.
So what about something like core class? Like, where would you go to get that?
Yeah, core class would be a taller order. I think one thing that Tiffany and I talked about is that in our current in transportation, the 3 contract days that are professional development days, that those could possibly be well utilized to offer core to offer some of these opportunities where it is a contract day, so attendance is required. For those of you who are unaware, we have 3 contract days in transportation during the school year that are not school days, not school attendance days, but where it's a contract day for transportation employees, where we do additional trainings, and that would be an ideal place to put
However,
the core.
we do run routes and trips on those days too. And like this last year, we did transporting students, winter driving, which is a required class. I think this is something we need to think about. One of the things, just to give everybody here some history about this, one of the benefits of, being here longer than dirt is that you get to see different aspects of what's happened. So back in the day, as I like to say, when I started, you were required to get these classes to maintain the license. However, your employer was not required to provide them. So we used to have to go to what they call summer workshops. So districts will get together someplace, and usually it's in Portland, and we would have to go on our own time and take these courses and then go through this whole thing. So one of the things we changed many years ago is offering these classes in-house so that people could get paid for it. They were readily available and easy. But as we've grown over the years, we're kind of bound because, we're like McDonald's, we never close anymore. I mean, we run 7 days a week. So even though we have non-contract days and spring breaks and stuff like that, there's still routes going, there's still trips going. So it's still a struggle, and that would be my concern is that and then just, and we kind of got to where we were just taking care of things for people so they didn't need to worry about it, right? We don't want anybody to lose their license, their certifications. So we started doing all these things and tracking of the hours and everything else, where back in the olden days, we didn't do that. And people we'd get ready to start the school year and somebody doesn't have a license. Somebody then is off and they're not getting paid or something, and that would be my concern, is I don't want somebody to end up in that position. So, I mean, I get what you're saying, but it's just, I think we just need to think on it a little bit.
Much of what you're talking about is either just good practice or contract compliance, current contract compliance. Can I ask you, are you currently requiring transportation employees to attend trainings that are outside their contracted days?
If we offer those classes, if they don't get into them, then yeah, they gotta go find it, which first aid, that's pretty easy. But when you get into ODE required courses like core,
Right.
transporting students with disabilities, winter driving, only a certified trainer through ODE can teach those courses.
But you're not
That's
requiring employees to do that off contracted hours. You're offering it off contracted hours. You're not requiring it, but those courses are required for the job.
Yep.
And we understand that, and none of that is changing here in our proposal. It's just, it's essentially a codification of this, of what you're doing.
And I guess my concern is, I totally hear what you're saying, and I wish we didn't have all these extra things. You know, back in the olden days, you had summers off, you had spring break off, you know, everybody did. My concern is that on the other side of it, I've been in positions where we've had really good drivers who can't perform the function of their duty. And they get paid, they get put on leave that's unpaid. And I would just hate to see that. I mean, that's just the part of me from being in the old days and watching this happen. That part of my job is to take care of people, right? And to be sure that they're able to work. And I just am kind of like sitting here going, red alert, red alert, red alert, red alert, red alert, you know, thinking, seeing the bad part of it, what could happen? You know, and maybe that's just where we need to go. It's putting it back on the ownership of the staff to just take care of it. And take it off of us to do that for them.
Again, I don't see anywhere in our proposal where we're looking to change those offerings or the good practices of making sure that training is available to staff. I think one reason we put D2 here is just that it does not make sense to us that you require staff off contracted hours to work. We understand that there may be training certifications that they are going to need if they don't come to offered trainings, that they're going to have to get them elsewhere, and that makes sense. We're not looking to make huge change in what you're doing. I don't see the outcome that you're describing coming from this proposal at all. Also a little nervous about talking about the before times. Or when you refer to olden days, I'm also like, are we talking about a time when we drank raw milk, unpasteurized milk?
Yes.
I got some issues with that too. Anyway, certainly if you have concerns, we're willing to hear them in a counter on this, but it's not our intention to, in this language, and I don't think anything that you're doing would need to change at all.
I had two questions or concerns that are non-transportation related. So, the reference to contracted hours, I'm wondering if this would mean if we're having people attend a training and it goes till 5 o'clock, but I normally am done at 3:30, can I not be required to stay for the full day of that training? So that would make me nervous because I can imagine where we got a full day training and that goes beyond your typical contracted hours, but you still need that training. So that would be one that would make me nervous. And then again, I don't know, Wendy, if this is in your area, and I don't even know if this happens, but I think of where we might have like a legislative change or something that impacted how we provide service to kids. And we have to get people in and get them trained before we start the school year. So I don't know how often that really changed, or maybe it's not a legislative change, but it's like, we're shifting our model of how we're gonna do special ed, and so.
Yeah, that definitely can happen, and then I think to your first point, safety care is often beyond goals. Contract hours, so that would be an example of where that could come into play, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a certain number of hours you have to take. Yeah.
So those two things kind of popped up for me.
Would hope in the situation with the big legislative change that you would ask to bargain with us over the impact of that change and that we would come together to talk about it and potentially, increase a contracted day, in that situation. But certainly, hearing your intentions and concerns there, and, willing to take more questions, obviously, but also, totally open to, you hearing our intentions and coming back with some language.
Yeah, we will.
Can I get a clarification real quick regarding the training and CPR and everything? I'm a big safety person. So I noticed in transportation departments, you guys have all your CPR, first aid, all your classes in August. Is there a
Throughout
reason,
the summer, but yeah.
is there a reason they're not offered during the weekends or some
Well-
evening classes? I know.
Part of it is trainers have lives and they don't really always, I mean, we do work weekends sometimes, we'll offer some stuff. Usually when we do weekends, it's behind the wheel. So because the parking lot is empty.
Right.
And you have more space. But that is a good part of it is just that they just.
I can say for health and safety, we can try to fluctuate different hours, weekends or evenings. And our rate of participation is not always as high, so,
Right.
yeah, so we definitely try to attend to when people go, so that's always.
I know a lot of people take vacations late July or early August. My follow-up question is, how many trainers or how many employees or how many trainers does transportation have?
Oh, good Lord. Well, there's 4 trainers,
Okay.
4 certified trainers. But on top of that, one of the supervisors, Debbie McFalls, is a certified trainer so that she can help teach classes. I'm still certified to help teach classes. Because it's a lot. There's a lot of people, and that's why we hold multiple like, especially first aid and some of the other ones that aren't as long. But then it's also required, like core is an 8-hour class. There's several that are 8-hour classes and it's, so that you can't teach them. Plus also keep in mind that all these classes, new drivers coming in have to have too. And, it's a lot to get 200 almost 250 people.
I know district-wide, the CPR and first aid training needs to be happening more on a regular basis. I think right now we do once a quarter and there are a ton of people that need it. But I don't think there's enough trainers.
And that is one reason why transportation many years ago went to that we had our own certified trainers, because there's no way district trainers could take on us as well. And we recently did it with safety care,
Right.
to help and to relieve some of the pressure so that others can get in to those classes and we can do our own.
Right. Okay, thank you.
District team, other questions on Article 21? Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody on 20?
You want me to pass this?
Sure.
Thank you. I think we all have it. Yeah? Okay. Okay, yeah, go ahead, David.
All right, so thank you all for your work in responding to our initial proposal on transportation. Just a bulk load of it. We appreciate where you've agreed with our language and where you've made some additions. So A2, you put in the added costs and we while it is not italicized, that was your language and we agree with that. So that would be agreed language there. And in A2, general education route, A3, we were in agreement together. You accepted our language. Number 4, the first sentence, you agreed with our language around shifting from special needs to requiring a variety of student-specific special accommodations, and we agreed with that language. Down at the bottom of 4, we had originally talked about a just ODE approved restraint and seclusion system, and you changed that to safety care, and we respect that change to not be talking about it ODE approved restraint and seclusion training. We did some research with ODE and just this month, and it isn't propagated across their whole website, but they've changed their language. And so we are proposing their new language, which was as of May of 2024, ODE approved training programs for preventing restraint and seclusion. And safety care is one of a list of programs that are ODE approved. And so that, I think, captures your interest in language, and then includes our interest in that we leave the options open if safety care serves, but there are other programs that are possible programs that would meet the requirements, the training requirements. Midday routes, we're in agreement on language and verse 5. Shuttle routes, we're in agreement of language. Activity routes, we're in agreement of language. Then going to number 8, annual route assignments. So we returned to our language. This was new language that we had proposed. And we heard your concerns, Carol. I believe we heard your concerns about that this is current practice, but what if you and the supervisors went to a conference and came back with an amazing opportunity, and we hear an amazing different way of assigning routes, and we respect that, wanting to have that freedom. Our sense with our language is that this is really solid current practice that works well, that provides good working conditions for our drivers and assistants. And so we wish to codify the current practice. And then I think, Nathaniel, you had some comments on this.
Yeah, I'd like to add that, you know, Carol, you kind of said like, what if we want to change it? And so it's worth us saying that, like, we feel like you've built a really good practice around this, and which is why we want to codify your practice. We feel like our language is open enough that it gives you some wiggle room for sure, to kind of do this how you've been doing it. We think that it's a good model, you know, that potentially it's a good model when codified, not just for this district, but it might be something that other districts would look to as well. If even without this language, if you were to change tomorrow how you did this in a radical way, we would find that a significant change to our members' working conditions, for which we may demand a bargain over that change. And so we would rather it be in the contract than you changing something and then us demanding to bargain over a change to the status quo or the administration of the contract. We would rather work with you to codify what it is that you're doing in a way that you find acceptable. And the only change we think we've put in here to how you're doing this is just that you be prepared to provide a written explanation should someone ask for it. If you feel like there's better language around how you're doing this, that we're happy to see a counter from you on that, but we would like it codified, because then it's more clear for potentially someone who, if you should leave, would take your place, and how to do it. It gives some guidelines on how it is done. It can be really challenging when people at your level, like a director level, end up leaving and you get someone new. If it's not in the contract, they are going to just change it. And then we are in a place where we have to demand a bargain and come to the table. And that can be very challenging for both parties. So we would rather have it in the contract itself. We can do that. Do you want to do that? Yeah. An issue with our proposal, been brought to my attention just now, for which we would like to actually call a caucus and discuss before we continue to present this.
Okay.
Everything we've presented so far through A8, we're really solid on. We just want to be sure about some of the next pieces in our proposal.
Okay,
Really appreciate your flexibility on that.
yeah, no problem. How much time do you guys think you need?
15 minutes. 15 minutes.
Okay.
15 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Thank you.
Yep.
I also wanted to say, nice t-shirt, Michelle.
Yeah, love it.
Thank you for that.
The minute was my size and I just got so excited.
You guys all know if you want a shirt, you just have to ask us.
Yeah,
We will provide. We would be happy to.
Welcome back, and, thank you so much for that, unplanned caucus. It's worth saying that there are a lot of moving pieces in Article 20, as I'm sure you're aware.
Yep.
And we work really hard to be very intentional about, our proposals and our understanding, our shared understanding of our proposals. And so every once in a while, something is gonna come up, especially in an article like this, that's so complex, where we need a moment to collect ourselves and figure ourselves out. Thank you for that. And we're there now, so I'm going to kind of recap kind of where we're at, and then I'm going to give it back to David, to keep moving. In A8 on annual route assignments was just explaining, we certainly want to codify again. Carol, your good practice there. We would like it in the contract. We would like to not have to demand a bargain in the future if there was a change, but that would happen in regular bargaining should you want to change. And the only addition to your practice is just that you be prepared to give a written explanation should an employee ask for one. Unless you have questions there, we're going to move on to the new and open routes clause, but I'll open it up for questions there, because we're in a decent place to see if you have questions so far.
I don't. For me,
I don't.
okay, Carol doesn't.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll give it back to David.
Okay. So on new and open routes, we have agreed on language there. You made the addition the last time you presented. The employees not selected may request to meet with their supervisor to discuss factors affecting the decision. Our previous proposal had been language along the lines of may request a written explanation from their supervisor. We're willing to agree to the language that you're proposing, that's okay. We would like it to be trackable. That is in terms of, that we could know the number of employees that have made those requests. So if the employee emailed the supervisor, or when the supervisor meets that be tracked. Yeah, we met with 3 employees who asked. And
Like just sending a follow-up email meeting summary of what was discussed.
that would certainly,
That's what we're imagining.
suffice so that there's a way of knowing
Sure.
if and how many folks are
Sure.
engaged in such requests.
Well, can I ask one question? So is there a reason why in annual route assignments, you would still want a written explanation versus down here is just a meeting?
Well, our original language, we had put written
Right.
in both, and then you all, and we didn't ask, we don't remember you presenting
Okay,
your rationale for
Yeah.
changing it for the other.
okay.
That was part of
Just
our quick
clarifying.
emergency caucus, was to discuss that. There's a difference there. I think it's worth saying that on 8B, we're open to it being a meeting and not a written explanation, but in both 8B and in our 9B, we want there to be some paper trail on that. It doesn't need to be like
Sure.
a formal form or anything like that, but yeah, an email or something so that if we were to ask the district, hey, how many of those have happened, you could tell us and who they were and when.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, going down to 10, students required special accommodations. We had done different language around health protocols, and you changed that to health management plans. That's perfectly fine. That still refers to the same materials, more current updated language, so that's great, no problem there. Going to B, trips. We had proposed some alternative language that we believed was really providing clarification. The alternative language really not changing the substance of the first part of this article around the 12 charter buses. You expressed an interest in retaining the current language with the addition of and the reason for each charter bus. And so in the first part of our B, we accepted your language with 2 modifications. or no. With two modifications, well, first, 1, 2, 3, 4, we just took the paragraph and made it into 4 bullet points, numbered points, so it's easier to reference. If people are talking about contract, it's B1 that we're talking about, not the third sentence in B. And so that is a duplicate of your language. And then we changed, instead of on a school year basis, we put between July 1st and June 30th annually. So the school year from July 1 to June 30th, that was the first change. We accepted your language on, and the reason for each charter bus, and the strike through during the summer months that are known by the transportation department. That was your strike through, and we agreed with your strike through. We didn't italicize that, but we agreed with your strike through. And then in 3, we thought that for which the district would not have otherwise provided funding was a little awkward wording. And so our attempt was to make that just more clear as those trips for which the district does not provide funding. And so if we didn't capture it, you're welcome to look into that, but we were just trying to find an equivalent language that was more clear. Any questions on this first part of B?
No.
Okay. And then in the second part of B, let's see, Karen, did you want to address that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so after some conversation about the kind of the proposal about the unwalled use of charter buses, we do feel that we have worked collaboratively, Carol, in the past when there have been issues with short staffing and transportation. And we would like to work collaboratively with you in the future. I mean, we did hear concerns about the time piece. And, you know, frankly, sometimes labor issues take time to work out. But when I think about the strength of our transportation department right now, based on the collaborative work that we did to get our drivers the wages that they have, I think our department's in a really good spot. Had we gone with charter buses to stopgap, I think our transportation department would not be in the same spot right now. And so I think we're interested in working collaboratively with you. We'd like to use that same process that we've used in the past in the future. And this language, we feel like this is like planning ahead for some potential future that we don't see coming right now. And if there is a shortage, we want to work with you.
We're not seeing this as an actual problem that you have that needs to be fixed. And in that, it's not compelling to fix it, especially if with a solution that we don't love. I mean, it's a solution that has fewer of our members working and more of the district money potentially being paid. So it's not great on a couple levels for us there. But again, what Keir said, we have a demonstrated track record of working with you to fix these issues, and we will do so quickly should you have issues again.
Any questions on that? Okay, under assigning trips, going down to C6, you agreed with our language by the end of the next workday. And then going down to 7, you had rejected our proposal of dividing 7 into a couple of different pieces and going back to original contract language. And we think there might have been some miscommunication in our intention in changing it into a couple of pieces. In our view, our attempt was simply to provide clarity that in our proposal now, so the original language that you re-proposed is in the struck through 7. And our 7 and 8A in our counter proposal now is really to capture that language with greater clarity. And so, R7, if a driver accepts or refuses a trip, they're moved to the bottom of that pick list. And then in R8, once a trip has been assigned and accepted, the driver cannot refuse the assigned trip within 24 hours of the trip departure time. And Carol, if we recall correctly, in talking with our dispatcher who handles trips, that the language on the Google form is refuse the trip. And our reason for choosing the return language is that this presumes that a driver has already accepted the trip. Let's say that the driver accepted the trip a week ago. They didn't refuse it. They didn't fill out the Google form. And now within 24 hours of departure, they want to return the trip. They do, it is refusing it, but it's not the initial refusal. It's a trip they've already accepted. And so it's in their plan, in their itinerary, and now they want to return it. And so we thought that that was more clear, that it's not that initial refusal, it's a refusal after having accepted it. And maybe we don't have the best language, but that was the reason for changing that. So that's the only substantive change. It was formatting and clarity between 7, 8, and then having an 8A. So any questions on that?
I have a question, David.
Yes, Ray.
Trip list, how long does that stick out for? Is it like do you make a list, they say there's 20 trips? Each person gets to plan for 20 trips, then the list starts, or does the list start like weekly or monthly? How does that?
A trip list or a pick list?
We're talking about trip list, right?
List.
Yeah, the
initial trip list is, because drivers aren't required to take trips, right?
Okay.
So at the beginning of the school year, like, usually she puts it a little before in service, but then it runs for a little bit after. Drivers can sign up to take trips, and within those trips, they can choose pick lists, right? And that's outlined in the contract. The original list, the original trip list out of each of the pick lists starts at seniority. Then after that, it rotates in the system. So originally it starts with seniority, then it rotates, and then it just depends on, because like some people take all the trips that comes up, right? So then you might have other people who don't take them all. So that's in that rotation, that will determine how quickly. Taking trips is not the big thing that it used to be. So we actually have less trip drivers than we've ever had. So everybody's getting plenty of trips right now. Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, thanks for that.
Like, just for example, like last week, we had 82 trips. So that's on top of all the other stuff we do. And of those 82, I know some of them, because that one was also air show. So some, those trips doesn't mean that's 82 buses. That could really be 110 buses. It just depends on how many kids, because there could be multiple buses on one trip. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thanks for that.
Any other questions on that?
No, I think I figured out where I'm at a little bit. I think the only thing that was throwing me off is that in that, what would be 8, that you then have that little sub A under. So that A is, some of it's current language, but some of it's new language. I think you just kind of rearranged it a little bit, right? I think.
Yes.
Oh, then that would be our error in formatting.
So I was just trying to track, like,
What
hey, is
goes-
this new and just rearranged, or I think that the substance of it is the same. I think maybe you just arranged it into like 2 different sentences, or it's not modified a lot. Again, if that was just what was keeping me from.
I believe, and David, you should correct me if I'm wrong, but we're moving it to after hour 7 because it just makes more sense in the flow.
Sure.
And then in doing that, also splaying out that A just makes it a little bit more clear and easier to
Yeah.
read. Then the only significant change is the wording change from refuse to return.
Yep. Gotcha.
Good. Thank you for noticing
Yeah,
that.
thank you for walking us through
Bringing it
that.
to our attention.
That's helpful.
I believe it's the same as our counter on April 30th, so I think it just got
Gotcha.
transferred straight from
Got it.
what we had already.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so moving on to 10, in your last proposal, you added or designee. We had by a supervisor and then you had added or designee and were in agreement with your additional language. And then I believe that everything else, we're in agreement with the balance of the article.
That's what it looked like to me as well.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. For walking through that. All right, I think that was all the proposals you brought, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so under our modified slightly agenda. Does it work if we go ahead still and present 13, or do you want us to wait until we come back and do other stuff? I don't know, like what the lunch schedule is.
As long as I don't hear complaints, I think you indicated that your 13 would not take too much.
No, I
time.
think it'll be really fast.
I think let's do it.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, thanks. So as this is going around, Michelle did remind me, we had actually one, I'm gonna need to make a hand change on one of these, and then we can get you a corrected version. So I'll let you know, which one that is.
Sure.
Okay, so you had proposed, I think we had either not proposed on this or left it at current language, initially. Two proposals that you had made. The first was in section, B, adding Juneteenth to the less than 12-month employees, and you had that asterisk that it would be, for those who are still on contract. So I think it's not a disagreement from our standpoint, from a philosophical lens, only it's for us, we calculate it as a $73,000 cost. So as we're talking about what our overall economic settlement is gonna be, for us, that's part of the equation. If we heard from your group, this is a significant interest to have this as a paid holiday, then I think we could entertain that, but right now, it's a $73,000. I know doesn't sound like a lot in the grand scheme of things. I think we're trying to be mindful of places we add cost throughout the contract, just because it adds up. And we're mindful of our need to come together on core salary and insurance and things like that. So we're a little bit reluctant to add cost elsewhere. Obviously Juneteenth added for the 12-month employees. That would have been a pay cut if we wouldn't have added that as a paid holiday for the 12-month folks, because there is no other day they could work instead if we made it a non-contract day. So I believe all other employee groups in the district, it serves as a non-contract day. But again, I think we're not looking at it from a philosophical level as much as from just a pure cost level. The one change that I would have you note, in C, we show it as having adopted your change from compensable status to on a paid leave. And I forgot to have the word district there, on a district paid leave. I think we brought up last time about you know, if they're on like an extended workers' comp or something like that, for us, that's not a district paid leave. The other would be an extended paid leave Oregon where they were not utilizing any other accrued leave to backfill. And so, we wanted to make that distinction. So we'll get you a corrected copy, but we'd insert the word district, in front of paid on, section C. So anytime somebody was utilizing any accrued leave, if it's an OFA leave or a FEMA leave or paid leave Oregon, then they would be on district paid leave for those purposes. Thanks.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, questions on this one?
Would you guys be open to moving under 12-month employees, moving Juneteenth down to the bottom after Memorial Day so that it kind of flows in line with the contract year? We added it right at the top, but would you be all right if we do that move?
You want them to be in order?
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good catch, Michelle.
May I ask for clarification about the dollar amount you gave? That is only the amount to pay for the employees who are on contract at that
Correct.
time? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we tried to just focus it on what would change. So yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so actually that all timed out pretty well because, you know, we're at lunch break now. And so I think if we just turn this into kind of a lunch / caucus.
You are back at 2:30 and you can do, financial presentation article 10 and 12.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Okay.
2:30.
that's great. Yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna say. We may also be working on 8 and 20. It's possible that we could come back before 2:30 with responses on 8 and 20, knowing that we would hold until 2:30 for the economic piece. Are you guys open to that if we are?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let us know.
Okay.
I think we're gonna be working on, a number of things. I don't know that any of them will be ready by the time we come back.
And I don't know that we will either, but it's certainly possible. We're really narrowing down a number of issues in both 8 and 20 where we have differences. So it makes me feel like, hey, maybe we can bring something back, you know?
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, let us know. I think we're definitely open to coming back earlier than 2:30.
Okay.
Do you think we might see 21 today or no? Professional?
Professional stuff.
I think, that, yeah, there's some possibility there. Yeah,
Okay. Great. Yeah, just let us know. Otherwise, we'll see you at 2:30.
okay.
It was for you,
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
also for us.
It's a shared interest.
It was a shared interest, yeah. Also, let me know when the airplanes aren't working. I can fix them. That's my job. I didn't know it was working. I feel bad.
Maybe let me know when.
Yeah, when things don't work.
Would be the short list.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's getting better.
Send me a list. I'm happy to fix them.
So you're saying anything in the district not working?
No,
except for,
no, specific
Oh.
audio visual things. Let me clarify. Thank you. Thanks, David.
Just checking. Hi. Hello. Welcome back.
We have 2 counter proposals for you, and so we thought, I know that we're not gonna do economics until 2:30, but I figured we get these back in front of you as soon as we could, and we start having conversations on them and.
Yeah, that's great.
Great.
Yeah, I think it's an efficient use of time.
Okay. What do we got going around here?
8.
8. Okay, so eight's coming around. We have one issue left in 8. I think collaboratively, we've resolved we adopted your language in C2, you know, it accurately reflected what the conversation was, so that one's done. We are really struggling with, I have to tell you, 4B, we broke it out into subparagraphs, but it's hard for us again, we want to be student-centered especially, and have that be the primary driver. We do agree that seniority is a factor, but not the only factor. We've tried to reflect that here, and first, also by, when we're talking about additional hours, we're really talking about at the time after which there's been an initial staffing allocation. That gets completed, then if hours are added, for us, that's kind of the additional hours triggered. And we've added, the district will consider seniority in determining how the hours are to be assigned. Again, I know that's not what you proposed. For us, it's a factor, but it's one of several factors, including some that you did list, qualified, available. Also, student relationships, you know, what's gonna be the best potential for student success. So seniority shouldn't be lost in the equation, but for us, it has to be among those factors. So that's the language that we've added there in 4B. And I believe that the remainder of it is,
It looks
we're in
like,
agreement.
I don't know if it was inadvertent, it looks like you completely deleted the option for employees to sign up for job alerts.
Oh, shoot,
Not bad.
that was
On purpose.
unintentional.
Unintentional.
Sorry.
All right, yeah, that's totally fine.
There's one other change.
Did we miss something else, David?
Well, in F, we had proposed survey responses shall be provided to the union within 10 district business days, and that is stricken.
We had,
And I don't know if that was by intent.
no, we had agreed to that previously.
Yeah.
I think
We had agreed to
we were
that.
working off an older version, trying to work fast, so. We can get you a corrected version of that, but yes, the second paragraph of B. Be in there, and then thanks, David, that second sentence of F.
So just to be clear, the only actual changes are coming back are in 4B.
That's the intent.
Okay,
Well, I mean, other than, this is the first time we've reflected that language in C2, but that was agreed to, and we're agreeing to your language, so it's not that much of a change.
I'll say on 4B, thank you for hearing our intention and for crafting something that you feel is honoring that while preserving your own interests. We'll go into caucus to discuss this.
Okay.
Anyone on our team have questions about that? Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, we also have Article 21 for you. Okay, Article 21. I think we've tried to address, some of the issues that you brought forward. Have not, at least with respect to one of them, but I'll walk through it with you. We have proposed to increase the professional improvement fund. We've proposed to increase it to $60,000. Looking what the usage has been, what seemed like a reasonable increase. That felt like it hit the mark for us. So you see that in B. Down in the fourth paragraph of B, we've agreed to the $2,000 per employee. With the potential for an additional $500 for a total of $2,500. We've tried to account for the concern we raised about that fund growing, you know, without any limit. So unused dollars will be added to the next year's 60,000. until the fund reached a maximum fund amount of 100,000, and then there wouldn't be a rollover anymore. It would just stay at that 100,000. So that's section B. Section C, we made the one editorial change that you made. Section D, we stated current contract language. I think we're reluctant to make a change here that we're not really sure what the ramifications of that would be. And we don't believe that there's a lot of training that's being required outside of contract time. We do have concerns. One of the issues I raised about you're a 6 or 7 hour employee and you've got a training that goes beyond that in a day. And then in theory, you would leave after your shift was up and there'd be an hour and a half left of that training still to be done. And how would we do that? You know, how would we get that implemented? That feels pretty problematic to us. And then there were the transportation issues that we talked about, and all in all, it felt like it left us really wondering what would be the impacts of this. They could be operationally significant. So we left that at current contract language. We did adopt your section G about the highly qualified testing piece.
Thank you. Any questions? I think we would love to know the entirety of where employees are required to attend training outside their contracted hours. I think that might help both parties here to get a full understanding of that piece.
Okay.
We understand your, for lack of a better term, your agita around our proposal, but I think we might need more information to come back.
Yeah, I would be looking at that also from you, like if there were particular situations or problems that your members were bringing to you, that'd be helpful for us to hear too. Maybe some of them can be kind of troubleshot, you know, with a lesser change, or it would just help us to process it. Really, when we started talking about it, it wasn't a problem that we had heard a lot about. And so it just felt like, whoa, what's this gonna change? So that was our concern. So we can definitely look into that. I think Wendy, it was the safety care one that was that.
Yeah, we really just talked about, you know, some employees are, you know, depending on how many hours they work, that safety care can be an extra hour. And you do have a 2-day requirement that it needs to be done in order to get the certification. That's not really our parameters. We have to do it. And so that would be, that could be a real hardship for folks. You have to have it in that position as.
That was one example that came up in our caucus, and so, but we can do some surveying to see where we might have other things of that nature.
Okay.
I have a question that might be relevant, and that is years ago, and I don't know what current district practice is, but years ago in transportation, if, for example, I wasn't available when core class was happening, an 8-hour full day, when it was being offered, I was under the understanding that I could contact other area districts or the Oregon People Transportation Association and say, hey, I wasn't available to do core in my own district. And ask other districts if I could attend with them, where it's certified trainers and so on. Is that in transportation? Is that still an option? And I'm sure that safety care, you could probably.
No, so safety care, you actually have to, you can only train your own district people.
Okay, so this
You
is
can't
important.
go outside, yeah. So, and that's why we always have to maintain a safety care training team within our district. So like, we can't even train like ESS people, they have to have them trained, so.
That's good to know.
And for those others, they still do offer, through Opta, the workshop, but it's in August. And other districts, you know, they don't, because everybody is so tied with how many employees get through, that in the last few years, they've really focused on either they do their own people in-house, like we do, like during summer or non-school days, or send them to write the workshops. which is like, for us on this side of town, it's Northwest chapter, so it's usually like they do it like in Portland, because that's kind of midpoint for the Northwest chapter. The South Willamette chapter, they offer one, but it's clear down in Grants Pass. And I want to say that they offer it during the spring, like maybe spring break.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful to know.
I'm wondering though, can we use a different program other than safety care? In other words, if the ODE requirement is for a specific training that's on a list of approved trainings, why can't we go to a different training?
Yeah, you can't, you have to, so first of all, as a district, we've invested in getting our trainers, like that takes multiple weeks, so we really looked at, first of all, a training system that basically required a reasonable amount of hours, but not an unreasonable amount of hours, because there are others that require more hours. And then we looked at how much it takes to renew. So in this case, it's a day to renew for safety care. So there was just a lot of factors in determining which program we used. And that really was a huge deciding factor, was just time and training. And so now we've invested in that. It's a huge thing to change to a different program in our district. So, yeah, but I'm happy to talk to you about that.
I think I was asking something different.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
Sorry.
That's a separate
Oh, okay.
question.
Okay, I was like, whoa, don't change safety care. That's like a huge thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got that. Okay.
I have a separate question.
Oh,
Which is the programs that may be taught by other school districts other than safety care. If someone were to go and get that certification from them for a different system, is there something that's preventing the school district from accepting that as?
like if somebody else had CPI training, for instance.
Yes.
Yeah, no, there is. So I think that's something that we've adopted as a school district to use safety care, and that's our district approved one. And I think the reason that we want to have that continuity is because my colleagues now all are using that same system in the same way that we would react or prevent or, all of those pieces. We want to be in line using that same vocabulary, that same way of response. We really want it to be a team. So having like a one-off situation, like somebody went and did CPI, we would have different vocabulary, slightly different training response, all of that. So you really want to have a good continuity for that type of training.
Okay, and is there something that prevents the district from offering safety care, in particular, the 2-day certification in non-consecutive days on staff development? Does it have to be 2 consecutive?
Yeah, it has to be within a certain amount of time. And so I have to look that up. I couldn't remember. I think it's like a week. So you have a certain window that you have to have both days of training done. And so really organizing and getting those scheduled, as you can imagine, is difficult, but it is within a certain time. You have to have all of it at once. So I can't remember. I can find out for you, but I think it's like a week or something like that. So,
So like those non-contract training days that were built in, we just did that for the first time last year. And there were 3, they said there was only 2. And those were additional, because a lot of it was like for transportation and for facilities and maintenance and stuff like that. We struggled to get in our equity work and some other district things, and simply because we do run all the time. And so that's what those days were created for. And then for us, it did give us the added benefit because it did give us another day for like winter driving, finishing up your, thank you, that thing we do every year.
Vector training.
Right, to build those things into them, so those days are that's what they were created for, so they're kind of pre-planned in advance to get those needs into.
Are these trainings that all drivers need to do annually? These trainings that you're talking about right now?
Well, the requirements vary. Some are good for 2, or some are good for 4 years. It varies from training to training.
My understanding, and I correct me if I'm wrong, is only one person on the bus needs to have that training. So either the assistant or the driver has to have the training, is my
For
understanding.
special accommodations.
Yeah.
And I would say
It sounds like
this-
we're talking about a lot of different things,
Yeah.
but it also doesn't sound like there's sufficient built-in contract time for our transportation staff to get all of the training that's required for them to do their job, which I think is what is the concern. If they're being required to come in during the summer or on spring break or on winter break or other time, that's not their contract time, and you're saying they have to have this and it's required for them to do their job, but it's not in their contract time, and they're trying to go on vacation and this is not their contract time. I mean, they're not
No, I get-
obligated to come in and work in
And I
that time,
understand
so
what you're
that's not
saying.
fair.
No, I get what you're saying. I totally get what you're saying, because it is a lot. And I guess for me, it's having known how we got here. It's that these things were actually put in place to make it easier for drivers. At that time, it was just drivers. We didn't have assistants to get those required things for their licensing, right? That was the intent behind it. And I think that over the years, that's gotten lost. Because you're right. I mean, you're right. Their job description says, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I always get the wording wrong, but it's like you are responsible to keep your licensing and your certifications current. So in the beginning, we were the only district that offered this, and it was brought forward as a benefit. Even today, that's why they still have these OPTA workshops, because we don't. And it's like, if that's the trend that we're going to, I just don't want, for my concern is that we have worked hard over the years to even get additional training for special accommodations. So that's why we offered it to special accommodation drivers and assistants first. Now we get district drivers, and our intent with getting 2 transportation trainers trained to teach this, because it's so beneficial. A lot of that course is about de-escalation, that we really want our staff to have that. In a perfect world, I don't know what that would look like, but we want them to have the opportunity. So that's my only thing, it's like, we just want them to have the opportunity to do this. I understand it's a pain that always ends up in the summer. I wish we had summers off. I really do. But it's.
Well,
this
they
is our
do have
reality.
summers off. I think that's the issue. They do have summers off. It's not their contracted time. So if the training is required, but it's not happening on their contracted time, that's the problem.
Some of it feels like a little like semantics, because the district could just publish a contract calendar for next year that included an extra day, and that day was gonna be dedicated for training, and then it would be on their contract hours. Like that contract.
Great solution.
That contract year fluctuates.
I think that's the.
Yeah, we would
Yes.
absolutely
Yes.
prefer that to,
I'll
yeah.
tell you this with some numbers. When we did one of those additional trainings, and which is the reason why we did it virtually, our absenteeism for that day was 96 people out of a staff of 240.
Was that, you think that was because it was early or during the summer?
No, that was during the school year. It was one of their those extra contracted days.
Right.
And that's why we did the last one virtually, because we wanted to get more people to attend.
I think this is where it would be helpful to know, like, is this a transportation issue? Is this other departments? Like, if we got a little bit more information about what was driving this, then I think we could look to find other solutions, because we're talking about 2 really different scenarios that we've brought up. The one where a training might go for a full 8 hours and you're only contracted for 6 or 6.5, and then the transportation piece. So that would help to hear a little bit more.
I do think they are different. They're very different
Yes.
scenarios, yeah.
I just, clarify the question, how many safety care classes does the district put on a year?
Well, that is a good question. I feel like I would have to look it up, but it's a lot, you know, like twice a
I think
month.
twice
or
a month.
something. Yeah.
Where is that published at? Because I've never seen it published anywhere.
Yeah, they get sent out, site like registration, or if you are hired into an SAA position, so part of their hiring packet. And then people that have to recert, they keep track of those and then send them out, with advance notice of like, you're gonna expire, please sign up.
And SCAs are the only class that has to take it, and
And
transportation.
transportation assistance.
And that was something that we worked hard to get. And I, you know, it's kind of like a two-edged, is that even a word? Sword. It's like, I hear we work with kids with special accommodation needs and special, they need a little extra. So we want this training, we want this training. So we work hard to get it, but then I'm hearing, but I don't want to take it, you know, unless it's X, Y, and Z. And it's, so that's what, it's like, I would like some more information, like Brian said, it's like, because if that's really how all transportation feels, well, let's talk about that, because, but I think that there are some pitfalls that could come from that, which is why we ended up where we are today. And I just want to be sure that people understand that.
Yeah, and I think if we look back at our proposed language, it was specific about required training. I think there's a lot of staff who will jump on the chance for offered trainings because they want to have that knowledge. And they'll take an opportunity off contract, they'll take extended time, they love it. At the end of the day, when you're asking staff to work and it's not their time that they're scheduled to work, they're not required to work. They're not required. It's not their paid time. It's not their contract. So that was what our proposal was that can't require them to work in the middle of the summer if that's not a day that was contracted to them to work. So that was where the concern was. If it's offered and they take you up on that, I think there's a lot of staff who would. But I think where it comes down to a concern is if there's staff who are like, no, that's the time that I'm off, that's the time I'm with my family, I want to be on vacation. They have a right to do that because that is their off contract time.
Also with the new changes to unemployment law, you know, requiring someone to work in the middle of the summer when they're not on contract could affect their unemployment benefits in a way that, I don't think we would love.
I'm thinking my concern right now is having our staff members ready when the year starts. It's like I hear what you're saying, but how do we get our staff ready for when the school year starts? Like making sure that all of everybody has kept up the license, they're training for safety care training, and I don't know what other trainings there are. So just want to make sure that they're able to have everything they need and the training before.
By the end of the year, do you know who needs training the upcoming year? 'Cause safety care is like 2 years.
In all of yeah, we do, and in contractually, we are required to have what we teach during the summer posted by April 1st. And about that same time, for my staff, they all get renewal numbers. So it shows them out, but you know, where they are for their renewal status, the hours that they need, what classes they need, how many hours they'll be losing before they return.
And that's posted in April.
And that's contractual.
TJ, did you have a question?
I just had, we were talking about training, getting training before the school starts, and I know for campus monitors that all ones I've spoken to would love to start a week before school starts, because once school starts, they don't have time to sit down and do their vector training. They don't have time to renew their certification, but they need to work as campus security. And I think more contract days would give a lot more people the benefit of training and get what they need before the school year starts.
We'll have more conversations about this and certainly take, what you've given us in the caucus and discuss, and we might have some more questions for you as well. Thank you for this.
Sure. Should we caucus again with the idea of coming back at 2:30 for the economic piece, or what do you want to do?
A little more time than that.
Okay.
I think 2:30 is. Can we come back at 3? That gives us a clean hour to come back, and then, it may be that we're coming back at 3 for financial presentation, articles 10 and 12 from you. And I'm not sure that there's going to be much else, so we'll see if we can, we certainly will come back.
Okay, sounds
Yeah.
good. All right, see you at 3.
Hi, welcome
Hello.
back, everyone.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Looks like our tech is up and running. Nice work.
Thanks.
Aren't you glad you're on this bargaining team, or you'd be getting pestered all day? Like, can you come to the boardroom to?
I'm glad
You're
for
already
my team,
here.
because they're getting pestered probably about all the other buildings that I'm not there to help with.
Did you have anything before we start, with the financial piece?
No, I don't think we do. I think
Okay.
we're right ahead, yeah.
Okay, so we're, ready to present financials. I think you're, gonna hear from our board member first, and then Michelle's gonna walk you through, presentation, and then we have the actual contract proposals for you as well. So that's kind of our order of operation for this.
Well, hello, everyone. I wanted to say, first of all, my name is Yvette Pinkelha, and I'm currently the vice chair of the school board. And I wanted to thank everyone who's also joined us online and in person. And I wanted to first off to say just thank you for all of the work that you do and continue to do for, our students and being representative of, your colleagues. So that's important. And as a representative of the board, I did want to share that, we stand with you guys and as advocates, and we'll stand by you when you are in Salem advocating for all of the work that you do. We support you in that aspect and in many more. And with that being said, it's also important to, keep in mind that our budget for next year has been set. And we don't want to see anybody, budget be cut, jobs losses. And so it's really important that, that we all know that. And I will continue to learn as much as I can, and I've been on the board for about 10 months now, and I'm happy to be here and learning everything that I can into making the best decision that I can.
Thanks, Yvette. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. All right,
This is gonna look very familiar to folks who have, sat through the budget presentation. There are some familiar slides, and then once we move through them, you'll see our proposal for both Articles 10 and 12, and then, some next steps for us, so we can go ahead and get started. I don't have it put here, so. Got two things. Thank you. When this is complete, we'll share it with you. We've been trying to share materials all along, so I have links built in that will take you to other information that's been shared along the way. I know that there's been a lot of other kind of email information requests that aren't included here, so these are just the presentations that have come to our teams together. I give a budget presentation. It was very similar to what the budget committee received. Beth came and shared information about kind of at the state level what's happening with K-12 funding in Oregon, so that's linked here as well. I have a slide in here about our guiding principles, a recap of our current bargain agreement, just so you guys can kind of see the story of where we started and where we landed and how long that took. Talk a little bit about the wage and benefit study that we had done by a third party this year. And then again, we'll present and give next steps with dates kind of the time there. So that's the agenda for today. Hannah. So here's our budget context, and this is really from the financial outlook situation. We know what our, because next year is the second year of the state school fund biennium, we kind of know what the level of funding is going to be. We know that there's an expiration of the federal support that we received for pandemic relief. So even though those are temporary funds that are going away, the reductions from that have kind of been expected. We knew that those weren't permanent resources to support operations. So, but we will be feeling that in our schools. We are experiencing an enrollment decline. It's about 1.5% a year, which is pretty impactful to us financially. You see that our revenue is tied on a per student basis for both our operating budget and also some major grants like High School Success, the student investment account, all of those things are tied to enrollment. So we're seeing those kind of things tighten up as we move forward in time. 4% fund balance target, that's different than a lot of districts around us, but we've held that for many years. At one point it was 5%, but during budget reductions prior to COVID, David's gone like this. We remember this. Our board intentionally kind of brought that fund balance down a little bit to save us for some reductions in staff. Our budget is 82% payroll and benefits. We are a service business, and that's what it rolls out as. That remaining 18% is for everything else, the lights, the supplies, the equipment, fuel, all of that stuff. So that's what our budget breakout is. As Yvette mentioned, our 24-25 budget is balanced. And anything that we negotiate at this point is going to create a deficit in the budget that will likely impact staffing. So moving ahead. All right, so here is a link. That's a live link, goes to our guiding principles. We shared those at the very beginning of bargain. And we're happy to revisit those at any time, but you can on your own as well. This financial package keeps us competitive for recruitment and retention purposes. It does not require a reduction in force and does not require increasing class size or caseload ratios. And our approach to the offer, again, some of this is very familiar to folks that have been through my budget presentation. So I apologize for that, but I also like to bring along the people that I see online and who have joined us today and maybe haven't seen this information before. Transparency and financial information, we are available for information requests, one-on-one meetings, whatever's necessary to make sure that there's a clear understanding of what our budget picture is and what our actual experience has been. We're looking for a 3-year settlement, just like this current agreement, that we feel that provides stability for your members. They can see growth in both wages and categorically and by positions. And also benefits, what they can expect moving forward in terms of benefits for a couple of years, which is really, helpful for people in their planning. And also district sustainability. We want to make sure that we're not, so overextended that we're gonna have to reduce services in the 3-year period, even though we don't know what our funding level is gonna be like in the next biennium. We want this to be competitive, targeted to market and demand. We want it to be student-centered, as we know you do as well, and we've seen that through a lot of our language exchanges. And then timely with clear implementation details. Now, when we started, I think we both had some pretty high hopes that we would be finished before the end of this year. And it looks like we're probably gonna linger, probably gonna come back in the fall. And so that's when those implementation details are gonna be really critical, so that people know what to expect. Okay. Okay, this is our current settlement, and it took us 6 months from the first proposal that the district gave to settlement. So that was a fairly long period of time. And we actually landed at 3% each year for general salary increase. We negotiated an additional top step for all positions. So folks who had long years of experience in or outside of the district had the potential to get the same amount of movement as someone who is still in that growing range. We added a longevity stipend in the second and third year. And then we had 3 years graduated implementation. That's a lot of vowels when I hear it out loud, of increases based on a wage study that we had done in partnership with the union. There were union representatives, district representatives. We looked at every position, trying to compare those to, I think, 4 or 5 other districts. And so we had agreed to like kind of where there were large gaps, we had those incrementally increased over the 3-year period for those positions. And then we brought in $1,200 per year bilingual stipend, and that's prorated based on FTE and hopefully the length of the year that that person worked. You can see here what our insurance, what we settled for again at the end of 6 months of discussions. This is where we landed. So go ahead and move forward. And so I have mentioned off and on, we contracted a third party to do a wage and salary study. Basically, we gave them the workbook from the last one and asked them to update. So it was the same districts that had been decided before, similar positions. We have the data. It hasn't been compiled into a glossy report all nice like we had before. But what we're seeing in the data is that the gap is really narrow. So between the adjustments we made from the last study and those interim margins that we did for driver wages, custodial, stuff like that, there doesn't seem to be the big gaps, which we're really, really thankful for. And so we're not proposing at this time to target any increases based on the study. All right. So here's just some context for classified staff specifically. This is a slide, again, it should look familiar to folks that were here before. Our classified compensation makes up just over $50 million of our general fund budget, which projected for 24-25 is around $290 million. The PERS rate, I always call that out kind of separately because it's kind of a big number. So for every dollar that we spend in salaries, we spend another 23 cents just on PERS. So that tends to be a hidden cost and a really long time deferred benefits to all district employees. We don't have a choice about it. It's a state program. We have to participate. And then our other payroll costs as a percentage of payroll. Similarly, our payroll taxes, workman's comp, unemployment, that all adds up to another 10%. And so for every dollar in wages we spend, it's another 33 cents in payroll expenses. So when I'm sharing financial information about the budget, I'm not talking about just the wages earned, I'm talking about the total cost of an employee. So that's why you might see some of these numbers and go, well, that's not how much I make. No, that's how much an average 10-month staff person costs, for example. You can see our current annual insurance caps is $16,500 per year. And there's a little note about the difference between 10-month and 12-month staff, even though we have folks all ranged in the middle. Okay? All right, here it is. We have our step advancement, and this is kind of built into the salary schedule, that anyone who's on less than step 8 will receive a 3% increase, just for being on staff, again, following year. So that's an experience increase. And then the general salary increase, you can see here at 3% per year. That's where we ended after 6 months of negotiations last time. This is very similar to the offer that we proposed to our licensed staff about a month ago. And so you can see the step plus the general salary increase is 6% for the folks that are able to move. And for the folks that aren't able to move, you can see that would just be the 3% general salary increase. Also note there that the way the schedule is currently designed, anyone moving from step 8 to 9 has a 4% increase. I didn't make that. I'm not sure why it is. I think it's an honorary thing to value people who've gotten at that level. So that's not reflected in the numbers above. Okay. And here's that offer, our estimated cost of the offer. And when we receive a counter from you guys, I'm going to provide it back to you in this so that you can see probably the gap between them. That way, just again, full transparency as we move through this process. You can see that the step advancement increase, what that costs per year. You can see our estimated cost at 3% for a general salary increase. And that does include payroll costs. It's important that that's noted here because 33% is quite a bit. You can see that we're offering $50 per month for insurance each of the 3 years. And that impacts members not opting out. So anyone who is taking our medical, they will receive the benefit of that increase. Folks who are opting out of our medical insurance, that will remain the same. And then you can see the total estimated cost there at the bottom. Okay. Again, you guys will have access to this afterwards. I just didn't want you to skip ahead. And I couldn't find really a great way to represent this, but I wanted you guys to have this as well. We have a lot of staff members, and I think this has shifted over time, but you can see only 20% of staff on that very top step right now when I look at across all of our categories and our positions. And that 17% are on step 1, and everybody else is kind of spread out. So that just shows that, you know, with a lot of folks are going to receive the 80% of folks are going to receive a step and general salary increase at least next year. So that's good news for everyone. Okay, this is just for your reference too. You don't need to dwell on this, but I just kind of wanted to give you that. I'm assuming that you guys aren't going to want to fiddle with the schedule structure, that you're going to want to maintain that the steps are 3 years or 3% a piece until the top one, which is 4% of an increase over the prior step. So the base plus the GSI, that's where that originates, but the rest of the schedule stays pretty static and it looks like this. So if you want to build out samples, I have some samples further on in the presentation. You can do whatever you like with. Okay. There they are. They are live links for folks that like to kind of drill in and see exactly from my position, what will I make at the end, you know, within each year. So you can see that it is hourly. It's super complicated to have all of the calendars, all of the annuals and all of the FTEs. So really it's just hourly is the most straightforward way that I can think to present that to you. And then here are our next steps. Really, we don't have any more sessions scheduled yet, but I wanted you guys to have information kind of on what at least our school board schedule, so that those are potential decision points for our school board. And from that, at the very bottom there, it shares kind of what our payroll cutoff is. So we would require ratification by HCU. All articles PA'd and voted on by membership, and then we would take that to our board and they would have a chance to vote on that as well. And then we would implement. So that's why that implementation side is really, really critical once we get into next year. That is all. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. I've got my notepad.
Thank you, Michelle.
You want to hand it out together?
Sure.
I'd like to ask, as one of your stated goals is competitive recruitment and retention. In your proposal, where will Hillsborough School District land in competition with neighboring school districts?
Yeah, I think you'll find that in the study, once we kind of translate it from a rough workbook into a more polished report, you see that as well. We were higher, lower, looking just right in the middle. So it'll be interesting once we move it into next year and the other districts around us that are bargaining have settled. Then we'll have more information at that time.
Where is Beaverton in their contract cycle?
They have an economic reopener this year, economics only. And I don't think they've started yet, or maybe they've had like one session.
Do you work with them too, Brian?
I'm not bargaining the reopener. I do their license bargaining and I bargained their last classified contract, but they're gonna do that economic reopener on their own, mostly because I warned them of my scheduling challenges. So, here are the actual language proposals to support what Michelle just presented. There's not a lot of change, but there is one piece in compensation that I wanted to cover. All of the strikeouts on section A just were time bound. They were things that were one moment in time. And so those have been deleted. So that's just updating. You see the proposed salary schedule increases there in A1. The only language change we proposed is on page 3 in section H, salary placement. Currently, we have a setup where 1 step credit is given for each 2 years of related work experience. We're proposing to move that to a 1-to-1, a straight across. And so you see the deletion of some language and addition of other language there. We didn't believe we needed the last sentence in that paragraph of if any new employee is placed at step 5 or above, the district shall inform the union. So if that still is relevant to you guys, we could talk about leaving it in, but it didn't seem as applicable if we're just going to a straight 1-to-1. Here's what we ran into. So then there will be people who say, I did not get 1-to-1 experience credit when I was hired. So we're trying to account for that primarily from a fairness standpoint and a pay equity standpoint, worried about both those things. So that paragraph below is how we propose to deal with it, where we would open what is effectively a 60-day appeal window where people could come forward and say, I don't believe I was given full credit for my experience. Here's kind of evidence or proof of my prior experience. It would only really be applicable for people who are not at the top of the salary schedule. There'd be nowhere else for any people to move if they were at the top. It would not be retroactive. It would be moving forward only. It's important for us that the district, much as it does with initial placement, gets to analyze and determine whether experience is related or not. And so you see that language there about any resulting salary adjustment being at the sole discretion of the district. We don't want grievances on that. Any adjustment in salary shall be effective the first payroll period following the granting of the additional experience. So it'll be forward looking, but this is our intended way to deal with people feeling like new folks were getting them something that they didn't get when they were hired. And we don't want somebody here who says, I've got, 6 years experience, I'm on step 3, and this new person with 6 years experience is on step 6. So we're trying to correct for that, again, pay equity concerns and just general fairness concerns. So I think we're open to a discussion on if you have thoughts about how this could be tweaked. I believe it is a shared a shared goal to move to a one-to-one. That's my understanding. So how we facilitate that, I think, is important.
I do have some questions on this one. My first question is just, you're looking to do this as a function of recruitment and retention, or really just recruitment, and then obviously you're gonna have some pay equity issues you want to adjust for?
I mean, I think it is largely recruitment. You know, I think, you know, Ray has talked about when he goes to offer a job to somebody and they find out how much experience credit the district can give them, and they think twice about that job offer at that point. I think you shared some of that, Ray. You know, trying to get people in the door. And then, you know, having this appeal window is both a pay equity and a retention. I mean, we do want people to feel like they're being treated fairly, and so I think it's kind of both of those.
My next question is about the application of this language. We had an issue where, as people were being hired into the district, they were receiving no credit for the first 2 years. Is your intention that they receive one step in addition to the first step for every year of relevant related work experience?
I have to process that.
So if I have 2 years of what you would deem related work experience, I would be step 3?
I don't know, in my mind, you'd be step 2 because you have 2 years of experience.
So nothing for the first year of experience, which is,
So an entry-level employee with no experience, and a person coming in with 1 year of experience in a role would be
Yeah.
hired at the exact same step, both at step 0?
Yeah, I have to think about that because you know, I guess it depends on what does step 0 mean? Does step 0 mean no experience? And step 1 means 1 year of experience, right? I hear the question.
Yeah.
Yeah,
some clarity around your intentions on there, and we don't currently have a step 0.
right.
Yeah, I misspoke. I'm in step 1.
Step
But we started the same. I
Yeah,
have 1 year of experience, Nathaniel has none.
You-
We
every-
started the same.
Because you couldn't start Nathaniel at any step lower because step 1 was the lowest.
Correct, but I
Right.
have a year of experience,
Yeah,
so I should get step 2.
yeah, no, I understand the question. I'm just trying to reconcile that with the idea of a year of credit for each year of experience. You know, my knee-jerk reaction is, well, then 6 years should put you on step 6. That's kind of like my immediate reaction. I do understand the issue that you're bringing up of how do you account for 0 versus 1 year of experience, so.
someone with 6 years of experience with the district would be step 7.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's something I'd like to talk with our group about.
Okay.
We do have some questions around what related work experience means to the district.
Yeah.
I think one of the questions, and we may have many, is, if someone is a substitute for a significant portion of a year in a position, is that related work experience to get hired for the position to which they were subbing?
Marta, do you want me to answer these? Do you want to answer these?
Yeah.
I mean, my thinking would be that's related work experience, assuming you're subbing in the position and it has the same duties and so forth as the position for which you're being hired into. It seems to be pretty directly related.
Yeah, then there are some things that are close. If someone were in an EA kind of role in another district and came to work in an SEA role here, would that be related or related enough? Would you be giving partial credit?
Yeah, that one's hard. I mean, it is a case by case analysis. I think that's what's challenging about. It's more nuanced. The look at related experience for classified positions for licensed, it's primarily like teaching, right? A year of teaching is a year of credit here. Your positions in your bargaining unit are so varied and have such different, like, non-school sector, you know, counterparts or similar positions. That's, I think, why we leave it a little bit up to individual analysis, just to, because I think it is fact specific.
Yeah, you need some flexibility there, and that makes sense.
So I'd look at the job descriptions, you know, from that EA versus the SEA, you know, are they materially the same? I think it gets harder as you start looking at like completely non-school work experience and how that translates over. That gets even, I think, more challenging or nuanced.
How do you intend on implementing a major fraction? Is a major fraction a quarter
Yeah,
of a year? Is a major fraction just over 50% of a year?
yeah, that's an interesting question. It is current contract language, so I've never really thought about that. I mean, I guess I would, again, these are just like, hey, what's rattling around in my brain when you ask me that question?
Let's lock it down right now.
Major fraction is 51% or 50.1%. That's what comes into my head, like
Right.
a major portion thereof to me is greater than 50%, but I don't know if that's how we've applied it. Hannah says, yeah, so,
How I do it right
God,
now.
thank goodness. I mean, that's why I get a nervous, that's why I get a nervous look on my face when you guys ask me, I'm like,
More questions.
I'm just gonna answer this and hope that it's, that's what it needs to be, it's, and it could be written perhaps better than major fraction. We didn't go at those pieces of it, but if there's been, and I sense from your questions that there may have been some confusion about this in the past, I mean, we can fine tune this language to account for those sorts of things.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think we're gonna have some discussions on where we want salary placement to go. And we do want to be intentional, and also we have a shared interest in working with you around recruitment. And also the retention piece. I think we'll have some questions about that.
Sure.
I want to ask about what a year is under this language, in that many of our members work school years, which are not obviously necessarily a full 12 months.
Yeah.
Is a school year, a year, and then is a major fraction thereof.
Yeah, to me, it's,
Just a little over half of a school year.
that's what I would think.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think you'd have to work a full 12-month. You know, I don't think we'd apply a 12-month calculation to school year experience, because I don't think that would be fair.
Yeah.
So I think that it would be a school year, and a major fraction would be over half of that.
That's how it's applied now.
Thanks.
Is
Okay.
if it's discernible that their work was inside of a school system, then yes.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you for that. What is recency?
10 years.
10 years?
Yeah.
So 2 years of experience within the last 10 years would be two steps.
Right now.
Yeah, well, the intention with the language you have here, which I also understand is some part of it is status quo language.
Yeah.
I'm not asking how you're administering
I
it
know.
right
Yeah.
now necessarily, right? You have a contract proposal, so I want to know how you intend to administer it
Yeah.
moving forward from your proposal.
Yeah, that's a fair question. I guess I'd like to have, again, some more conversation with our team, because my initial reaction would be 2 years of experience in the last 10 years would put you on step 2, but I am understanding the question that you asked and why. So I think I'd like to process that a little bit more.
Okay, that makes sense.
What would be the process for an appeal?
Well, I mean, we were
asking that too.
we're building the plane as we fly it a little bit, you know, I mean, again, I think we're open to what that would look like. I think you would initiate that appeal with HR. Maybe we develop a form or something like that that said, you know, do you want to appeal your current step placement, and here's the information that we would need. That probably would be better than people just sending in emails.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
It would
same.
be in some sort of form system where they upload their appeal, whether that's a questionnaire included with that, and then attaching documents or different things like that. Yeah.
How are you accounting for the appeal process in your budget?
We're not.
You're not. And
We're
I'll say-
anticipating it to be an extra cost, an unquantifiable extra cost that we're not counting against the salary or insurance proposal. We're just assuming we'll absorb that cost.
Because of the language at the end of this paragraph in H that you're proposing striking, we do get regular information about those who are placed at step 5 and above.
Yeah,
I'll say that it's a good number of votes.
Yeah, I guess I was maybe erroneously thinking that wasn't necessary anymore with the one-to-one, but maybe that was serving a completely different purpose.
Understood.
So, I mean, if that's an important thing that wasn't one of our like top agenda, we really want to get rid of that last sentence. If it's still serving some purpose, I think we're open to keeping it. If it's unrelated to the switch over to a one-to-one instead of a two-to-one.
Okay.
If I could go back to the 10-year, I was wondering if that was like a right hard line, or is there some leeway? For example, if somebody started out as a line cook and then they spent 3 years as a, lead cook, and then they were maybe the restaurant manager. Would you be willing to reach back a little bit more if they spent maybe 5 years as a cook and then came over here? Like, would you be willing to go back more than 10 years if it's directly related to the current?
The district is currently generous in
Okay.
their evaluation of 10 years.
Okay.
There's some flex to that, it sounds like.
And in the 10 years, a lot changes, even within education, that it might not be relevant. Anything before 10 years.
Yeah, so right now it just says recency, so 10 years sounds like it's our working definition of recency. That's what I'm assuming we've used.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to see it play out. If people come in with a lot of experience, they're gonna be topped out very quickly. That also isn't always the best position for morale, or, oh, you come into a new company and you're already making the most you possibly can. Like,
Yeah.
I think maybe there's something there.
It's worth saying that we appreciate, Hannah, your generous administration of the contract.
And very
Um,
nice. Noted in the record, yeah.
The 60 days you've got in here, I'm like trying to wrap my head around, like the sheer, like, how many staff do you have who are gonna process this, and what do you imagine this process looks like? A 60-day window is pretty short to some degree, especially if you're looking to kind of get all these appeals, and then how much time after that do you think you'll be processing through these appeals?
Yeah, I'll let you in a window into some of our decision making, and I think a lot of it was me and Hannah saying, what should we make this appeal period be? How about 60 days?
Understood. Yeah, understood.
I mean, we don't want
appreciate your candor.
We don't want this to be a year-long thing.
Yeah.
And we don't want to be set an unreasonably short. Our timing, I mean, it's looking like we will settle and we will have already started next school year. I would worry more, like if we looked like we were going to settle really soon, I'd worry about a lot of school year employees leaving and not being able to do that within 60 days. That might be less of a concern, but we're open to suggestions on that as well, knowing that we just don't want it to stretch on indefinitely. So that we picked 60 days. It felt reasonable, but if it feels short, then maybe we need something longer.
Does Oregon's relatively new pay equity law interface with this in a way that you considered?
Well, I mean, I think I was concerned about pay equity along the lines of we had somebody working here who had 6 years experience, but was on step 3, and we had a new person who had 6 years of experience and was on step 6. That was going to give us some pay equity concerns, hence the appeal thing. I think we want to right the ship for ourselves so we don't have those pay equity problems. Yeah.
Are you open to an ongoing appeal process that would prevent claims against the Oregon law?
You mean like outside the window?
Well, let's imagine for a second, I missed the 60-day window, for whatever reason. But now I'm in a place where I am clearly dealing with an equity issue with coworkers who are coming in new.
Yeah.
That would be a situation where you might have a legal problem, but we might not have a contractual avenue for them to get relief.
Yeah.
Would you be open to a contractual avenue for them to get remedy?
Yeah, I mean, I always want to make sure that we can head off potential legal liability before it happens, for sure. I don't want, well, ideally, we would get those processed during our window period, so. But again, yeah, I don't think we're close to that, because I think what we don't want to have is we have pay equity claims, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, and a scenario that could happen in this window is if a person was, if a current employee was on Oklahoma
Sure.
leave for 90 or 120 days, and just simply wasn't here when we
Yeah.
ratified and not here
I don't
within
believe
60 days.
yeah, sorry, to interrupt you, David. I don't believe we would intend to shut those people out of that appeal process.
Right, I didn't hear that at all, but that could easily happen.
Yeah,
What are you imagining is the proof of experience?
I mean, what do you require now to demonstrate if people are wanting to have experience?
A resume.
A resume? Okay,
Our current application and resume is how we evaluate somebody's experience.
okay.
That'd be something along those lines. I could see it also accompanying a questionnaire.
I'm like trying to imagine someone
Me
who's
too.
like 6-8 years-ish, right, with the district, who's like, what do I have to do to get to prove that I had some experience
Yeah,
here, right?
I think
to
it would
get-
be employer and position held, and if it's not clear from the position held, the description of the duties in that position, probably.
Okay,
Yeah.
Sometimes with other school employers, you could get a job description without too much trouble.
Yeah, usually people put a description of their work in their resume, the duties they completed. And that's how we currently evaluate. If I can tell what somebody's experience is, and I feel like there's something in there that might apply to their job, I call them and talk to them. So, I mean,
Yeah.
we're very open to helping people explain how their experience could be related.
okay. That's helpful, thank you.
I just have a couple of questions. Real quick. Looking through this, where do you guys come up with your shift differential?
Like the amount or the
Yeah.
time?
The amount.
Honestly, we didn't look at, you're looking at G1 and G2.
Correct.
Yeah, we didn't really take much of a look at that as a team. It's current contract language, and we didn't have much conversation about should that change. I don't know where the 20 cents came originally. I've bargained this contract a long time, but I don't remember what it started out, if it's evolved at all over time.
Right.
Yeah, not sure about that.
Okay, that's great, thank you.
Yeah.
And the second one is, and Michelle, this is for you, you said the wage comparison wasn't gonna really be used in all of this. So I just want to clarify, because you said last time around, there's quite a few people, including me, who job was not compared. Like, everybody compared my job to campus monitors, and my job is nowhere near a campus monitor position. And so I know last time around that was frustrating for my department with two of us, is that we felt overlooked because we're being grouped in with people who work during the day, in the buildings, and that's not what we do. And I know there's a few other people that were like, how can they compare my job in these districts don't even have my position? So, and that's where I'm at, when you said, I know at the beginning of bargaining, we talked. And you mentioned in the email that per campus monitors, and that's been a struggle for me because we're different breeds in campus monitors. So we work totally different hours, and so I was just curious about that.
Yeah, again, there, the study overall didn't show a big gap between the unit wide, like in any specific place. So I would think, TJ, for your position specifically, working again with your supervisor, with Aida, with Martha, if there's a reclassification that needs to happen, or a different job description, like, there's an avenue for that.
Right.
I feel kind of lives outside of what we kind of studied.
Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that study wasn't being used for wages.
I mean, it's used to inform how we stack up with competitors. I understand that some positions may not cross over very well. We run into that a fair amount doing classified employee wage comparators. It's pretty easy when we do licensed bargaining unit looks, one unit against the next. The districts, call their positions different names in classified units. Larger districts have positions that don't exist. Sounds like, I don't know how many other districts have your position.
Vancouver,
Yeah, so it is a challenge to do a comparative wage study in the classified ranks because of that. And you try your best to compare job descriptions, and it's sometimes imperfect.
Right.
Yeah, one of the things we found is that some of our comparison districts have contracted services for
Right.
certain, specializations or categories of work. And, so for them, we didn't try to draw a comparison because
Right.
that, employment for that person is different in terms of wages versus benefits.
Yeah.
They just don't stack up.
And I understand, and I love the campus monitors that we have in this district. I just know that, my coworker and I, we both feel like over the years, it's been, the campus monitors. We wish we were daytime numbers, but we don't. So I just wanted to clarify that for done wage study.
I also have a question related to the wage study. Did that take into account maybe like different hours of classifications or extended like contract days? Because I know in some districts, like an LMA is guaranteed 8 hours a day, which may be hourly. The hourly wage might be similar, but their yearly take home is very different based on their hours and their count.
Yeah, we were really focused on the hourly rate. That seems to be kind of the common thread that people connect most to. So we were really focused on that, but we also have like number of days and annual amounts, which could very different, be very different based on how many days that they were able to work and the hours involved. So again, it's not in a releasable format right now. It's still pretty, looks like an Excel workbook. But I think, over the summer, Hannah and I will probably get together and, present something to you guys that's more digestible. And maybe when we get back together in the fall, you can see it for yourself. It's not our intent to not disclose. I just wanted to give you guys a note now that that's not something that we feel we're going to use in terms of leveraging for in certain positions, especially in light of placement.
Having done it in the last contract, and one thing, when we go into our conversations, we're going to be talking about, I think, your presentation showed 19-ish%, if I remember correctly, that we're on the top step. That would only be receiving, a COLA or the adjustment to the whole salary schedule of 3% that you're proposing for each year. Is there a way that you can, tell us kind of what the extra step costs? Having done that in the last round of bargaining, you added a step at the end of the wage scale. You shifted the last step from 4% to 3% and then added a 4% step, right? As we're having our discussions, we obviously know that we have to weigh the varying interests of our membership, and longevity is definitely an interest. What does that look like as far as overall costs of the district? Compared to a percentage that's across the board, if you can. I know that might be a difficult thing to answer.
Yeah, I'll need to bring that back. We actually have actual data. My budget outlook, we implemented that same strategy across all groups. So right now it just looks like a big lump sum increase. I have to go back and really look and see on a percentage basis what that was for classified. I know that is a strategy that worked well last bargain. So again, our 24-25 year is pretty set, but there's flexibility in those out years, and we'll have the opportunity to advocate for school funding in the meantime. So I hope you guys just take that into consideration while you're working on that.
I think we can definitely get a cost breakdown of like, what does 1% cost? What did that added step cost and so forth. So it kind of unit costs for those various things.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the same information we look at too, obviously, so.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for that.
Yeah, Michelle, on the GSI, the 3%, 3%, 3%. Is it like simple or compound increases? So like if my pay was $100 a year, and then I would get $3 more in year one, then is it $3 more in the second year, or is it 3% of 103?
That's what it would be.
Yeah, it'd be 3% on the 103.
Yeah.
And
So a
then
little bit-
3%
Yeah.
on whatever that figure is.
Yeah,
Yeah, it comes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, it's important to recognize though that the general salary increase is applied to step one. And then it's a 3% for each step after that, building on step one. So when you do the math on the paycheck, it might reflect differently depending on what step you're on. And again, if you're moving from 8 to 9, that's 4%. So that just comes up, we find in implementation, that people think it's 3% on every step, and it's 3% on the base step, and then it's compounded by the step and increment, which is also happens to be 3%.
It's the only way you keep that constant increment throughout the schedule. If you did 3% per cell, you'd end up with your steps would get all wonky after, well, right away, but then even more so.
Well, that makes sense. Part of the clarification is that in the table, you had 9%, and actually on my $100, it would be more than 109, it would be, and I don't have it in my brain.
Yeah.
It would be more like 9 point something.
I think you're correct. I think we're just erring for simplicity,
For
but
simplicity.
you're actually we should be factoring in that compounding because that is a more accurate representation.
Well, I assume that your bottom line numbers include that already,
They
right?
do, they
Yeah.
really are going off of kind of the actual, like everything is projected out based on our current staffing.
Mhm.
So, if that holds true, then, I'm trying to account for the costs on a budget basis.
Yeah, the real costs. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Your proposal on insurance, is this proposal based on expected increases in costs?
This proposal is based on, what I'm projecting the district can afford at this time. There can be thoughts around whether or not these, contributions towards insurance get rearranged and targeted towards wages. I don't know how that's working. I know that we're gonna be having discussions soon about, 24, 25 and the rate reduction level set in the pool. So, it may not be necessary to have it here, and those dollars can potentially be redirected somewhere else. Historically, this has been the top end of our settlements. So really just wanted to start there. Yeah, start there, start in a fair way.
And you have a well-operating pool, that I think helps quite a bit.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
On the insurance, you had talked about a change to the definition of family members in another agreement. Does that also apply in the insurance world, or is that limited to the bereavement?
Are you looking at a specific part in there?
C and
Tiffany, that's really bound by the
Oh, yeah.
OEP and our providers, Kaiser and Moda, like that's
Yeah.
all prescribed in,
that's not on our end.
that's not on
Right,
us.
okay, that's what I.
It's a minor thing, but on Article 12C, it says employees are legally married or recognized domestic partnership, and where both members of classified bargaining unit may combine their insurance contributions. But it doesn't mention anywhere that there's a cost for that. Does that need to be somewhere?
From my perspective, it's implied, it can be clarified. If that would be helpful.
And I had on L 1 through 6, I had a question from a couple different members to me about the amounts for the opt-out and why they aren't higher.
Well, I mean, it's always a kind of a guessing game. When you set those when you set those opt-outs, because just trying to think how to, you have a certain number of people who will opt out regardless of whether there's a payment or not, right? So the opt-out payment is a net loss for those, to provide to those people. They were gonna opt out anyways, right? So the question is, what's the amount that incentivizes people who can opt out without generating such a size of an opt-out that it is a big drain. It comes from the pool. So we don't want to drain down the pool too much. So it's like, what's going to be an incentive for people who have the ability to opt out without depleting the pool too much? So it's more of an art than a science, I think, in trying to arrive at those amounts.
And when you say pool, you're talking about the pool of money that's provided to cover the benefit for everybody.
Correct.
Do you know offhand what percentage or how many classified employees opt out?
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I don't expect you to know all the answers.
We'll get that for you.
Thank you.
It did come up last time as, you know, an encounter, and the team decided that they, you know, that wasn't as a high priority as other financials. But it does come up every time when I think about it, and there's a price tag for it.
But yeah, we can get you the number of people who opt out. Other questions?
I'm wondering about the longevity stipend. Being an employee myself for 18 to 20 years, and how we've had a lot of this conversation about appreciating and our employees and people who have been here for quite a while. How was that determined to remove that longevity? I'm not sure. I mean,
Yeah, so are you looking in the section A where we have a number of things crossed out? Yeah, I guess what the district had not historically had lump sum stipends like that for longevity. I think this was something that was a new piece that was part of that, and part of that bargain was there was a lot of one-time money, ESSER funds that were available to the district. And so I think you saw that across even licensed bargaining unit and classified, where it was like, hey, we have some one-time money, and obviously those stipends have a non-reoccurring cost, right? And so different than adding to the salary schedule. So it was possible to use some of that one-time money to put some of those stipends into effect. So I think we find ourselves in a different spot right now without that ESSER funding. So that was one of the things that made it feel different this time than last time. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think it's definitely an offset though, like if you guys countered with that included, it would have a cost to it, so we would have to look and see like where would we come back a little bit to put this in, or, you know, I think that's just part of the conversation, and the whole thing kind of rallies around that. I was surprised to see that just, you know, under 20% of our staff on step 9. I know that that is different than what we have had in the past. Like we've had a lot more topped out staff last time we bargained. So that was really interesting. And there's a lot of people in the middle that are going to experience movement. And so, sorry, a lot of talking to get to that number. To add something like this may be much smaller because of the fewer number of people on that. So how it's structured too is really important, whether that time that you gave 18 years. Is that what you said?
currently,
Yeah, wow, congratulations and thank you. But like whether or not that was in district or out of it, like all of those things I think matter when we're talking about honoring these top staff employees. So stuff for you guys to consider and bring back to us for sure.
Yeah, it is interesting that breakdown, who's on the top step and who's not. For our license group, it's almost a 50-50 split. So the full half of that bargaining unit are stepped out and don't receive a step increase when we bargain. So then greater number of your unit members do get that step increase. comparatively speaking. So it's kind of interesting how that breaks down.
When thinking about this sort of thing, I always find it helpful in my head to remind myself that anyone who is receiving a longevity stipend like this, a bonus every year, if we don't negotiate it into the contract, we feel like they have lost it.
Sure. Yeah.
It's worth putting that out there.
Yeah, I think we'll be interested to hear from your group about priorities and where you'd like to prioritize resources. I mean, we opted to come out with a fairly kind of just basic, straightforward, 3% for all, sort of a piece plus the step increase, but I mean, we fully present that expecting to hear from your group where your priorities might be somewhat different from that. So we expect those conversations.
Would it be possible to get some information on the cost of that, specifically for the number of members who would have that 15 consecutive years of service? That may or may not relate to top stuff.
You haven't mentioned, I don't know if you're still doing this, that calculator, that's something that in former bargainings that you all have provided to us, which had been a very useful tool I had found, the calculator of putting this all together in a spreadsheet where we can play with the numbers. Is that something you're thinking about providing, or is that something that just is no longer part of practice, current practice?
I don't have the same format that Adam Stewart provided before.
Mhm.
That said, I can give you some estimates for different levers. But probably won't be as exact, but you can get right down to the salary schedule and see the dollar amount change. So,
Okay,
I'll see what I can do to provide a tool.
okay, thank you, that was wonderful. For those of you unaware, it was a calculator where we could play with the numbers and move insurance numbers around and GSI around and steps. So, we could play with those numbers and it would auto-populate the whole rest of the spreadsheet to say, this is the impact of shifting monies to here or to there.
Yeah, I'd certainly remember that.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, and we played with it for 6 months, so we want to play with it again. No, but the earlier you give it to us, the more playtime we get.
I will say thank you for bringing in that stipend for a lot of our bilingual, and it's fantastic having a lot of our bilingual support for our families. Not only in Spanish, but all languages are available because we are quite a diverse community. So being able to ask somebody, say, hey, help me out with this really is fantastic. So
Good.
I think that means a lot to a lot of our staff.
Great.
We'll share that with Colin. She was a champion for that.
Yeah.
You're thankful.
Yeah.
That may be all the questions that we have
Okay.
for now.
We tried to take note, if, I'll offer this on Michelle's behalf, sorry, Michelle. I mean, if the other things come up that you want costing on, it's always helpful as much notice as you can just send an email or something that
Yeah,
sometimes takes a little while to get to.
excellent. Thank you so much for this.
Yep.
We have much to discuss. Yeah. I think that means are we ready to caucus?
Did we want to talk scheduling or did we want to talk?
Do you want to take?
I see nodding, but I asked 2 questions, so I don't know you're.
Don't
Yes.
ask 2 questions at once.
I know.
Yeah.
No, but
I guess my question was gonna be kind of, do we have work left to complete with the rest of today? Or are we at a time where we're not likely to have counter proposals? That also is kind of part of the question.
We don't want to answer the one question one way and then be a liar in like an hour.
Yeah.
I
hear
really
you.
hope so.
Uh-huh.
I'm seeing some nods.
Boy.
I'm seeing some, I really would like to.
Do you wanna do a check-in caucus and then maybe either pull a couple of us out in the hall or just
Sure.
text and
Yeah.
give us like, here's what we're thinking.
I think that sounds great, and thank you for that flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, thanks,
and
everybody.
yes, we will wanna look at scheduling and getting some things on the calendar. That will be part of it too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys can think about, I'm gonna ask if we can go ahead and propose a half a day, August 12th.
That was a date that Connor wanted us to throw out there.
Okay.
August
And
12th.
half day, meaning what? What
Bargaining,
half?
bargaining, it's morning or afternoon, it's up to you guys.
Oh. All right,
Don't look at me.
okay.
What she's trying to do is she's trying to go ahead and do possibly a half-day license and half-day classified.
Okay.
So. Do we?
Thank you so much. We'll discuss.
Thank you to our online attendees. We'll be back. Thank you to our friends in the room. We'll be back.
Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much.
Yeah, welcome back. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, this way. So you guys, we're gonna start with you.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah, thank you.
Okay, Hannah, we're gonna start with 21.
So we want to thank you for a good discussion around professional improvement and acknowledgement of a real shared interest here in investing in classified staff and their ongoing growth and education. And appreciate agreement on moving to $2,000 from $1,000. Our counter proposal here is we're proposing coming up from your $60,000 a year to 80. And to move the cap up to 120 from 100. And our reasoning is essentially this: in moving from $1,000 to $2,000, we want to ensure that the fund not serve fewer members. And so in order to accommodate for that, we do want it to go up a commensurate amount per year. And the $120,000 cap makes a lot of sense to us in that if there should be a year where we only use half of this fund, that then we're gonna hit the cap for the next year. In the last 3 years, I don't think there was a year where we used that little of the fund, but it's possible. And so that's why our proposal in that section B is to go up to $80,000 and a cap of 120. Then I think our next change, Kira's going to talk about a number in D.
Yeah, indeed, we were just trying to bring together some of the conversation we had about training, and again, I believe it's a shared interest to provide training during paid time as much as possible. And so just kind of reworking some of the existing language here. I'm just gonna read it out loud. The district shall pay the full cost of tuition fees, supplies, mileage for out-of-district travel, and any other related expenses for any class, workshop, or seminar an employee is required to attend. The district shall provide time during regular working hours for any required training, including any video/computer training. If such training is offered and accepted outside the employee's work hours, the employee shall be paid at their hourly rate and if applicable, overtime. And, during our caucus, we did discuss, Brian, what you brought, which was the concern about employees working like an extra hour or to attend safety care. And we haven't heard that concern from a lot of staff. There are a lot of options to attend safety care, and I think usually staff can find an option that works for them. Usually there's not a huge concern with staying after 1 hour, one time. This was more about being called in or being told they were required to come in for days outside of their contract, so.
And the trend has been to, and I think Carol did well to show us the long history. But the trend has been moving towards where there are required trainings, that those be things that are within the contract, and those are things that our members can receive here at the district level. And we want that trend to continue. Whereas there are trainings and certifications and things that you require as an employment requirement of our members. We want you to be, offering those in as many ways as possible. And to do so as much as possible within the contracted hours and days. This is a little more motion in that direction.
Okay, and then G, we're in agreement on, right? Correct. Questions? Thank you. I don't have any questions, but thank you for that. Excellent.
Ready?
Hold on. This thing in part about, getting Phoenix. Me.
And in the wrong spot. Oh, man.
Lots of back and forth and in the last.
Yeah.
The last counter we received from you, there were some things omitted that.
Yeah.
we talked about at the table, and then we tried to put them in and we put it in the wrong place.
Oh, you put that piece in A instead of B.
We know.
Oh,
Yeah, we know
Kira
what
is
you're talking
correcting me. We're not taking responsibility
I
for
put that
having
there,
put that in the
but-
wrong place.
I don't know, but put out there, but the point is, that should be in B. The
Okay,
language is there, it should be in B.
got it.
The overall intention is that we accept all the language in this article. So we were really hoping to have like a clean copy. And this is really anticlimactic, so.
We're ready to TA
Right.
on Article
We're-
8.
Yeah,
We
it's
need
too
a
close, we
clean
just need a
copy,
clean
which-
copy with this
Even though
language.
there's like 40 copies of this article on the table, we don't probably have one inside.
Maybe we, yeah,
So we'll
Yep.
work together to do that, but, thank you for your work on 8.
Yeah,
We're
thank you.
ready to
Yeah.
stay there, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, great. We're happy to TA this one as well, so thank you.
And sorry, Hannah.
sorry.
Thank you and sorry.
Moving kind of quickly today.
Yep, good. That's nice to get another one done.
Excellent. Let's talk, bookkeeping, scheduling stuffs.
Okay.
Were we gonna celebrate?
Oh, yeah.
Celebrate.
Yeah, sorry, Margaret.
Oh, Margaret said no. Oh, she said yeah.
Oh,
Okay. Let's show a lot. Let's do it. Well, more, but I thought. Let's do it, let's do
Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret.
You're welcome.
Where are we on schedule? Oh, you asked us about a date in August. We have to stick to our position that because our members aren't available, we don't want to bargain through the summer weeks. We really want our members to be able to be present, and not be doing this work while their attention is somewhere else. So, thank you for that offer, and, we'll be really happy to meet with you in September. Do we have a date?
Yeah, I mean, we would be happy to look at an accelerated bargaining schedule in September. If you would be open to moving more rapidly. We had discussed the week of the 17th as kind of a good starting point. I mean, obviously, we wouldn't think people would want to meet the first 2 weeks of school. But we'd be happy to meet beginning the week of the 17th. If Tuesdays still work for your team, we'd be happy to keep Tuesdays for our team. Potentially these longer bargaining days, I know they're not like super fun, but they are productive, and so we would be open to doing that or meeting at a more consistent cadence so that we can move a little bit more quickly in fall, because it is our interest to get through this quickly. We're not trying to hold up the process, not trying to drag it out.
And we will be doing work through the summer, so when we come back in September, especially with an accelerated schedule, we think we should be able to get things out really quickly and be moving with them.
Okay, so we probably need to check in with Kana. I'm available on the 17th, but,
All right, we can take the scheduling offline. I think
Yeah, why don't
that's
we do
totally
that?
fine.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well,
So things to consider after September 17 or after, Tuesdays still work, longer days are good and more constant. Right?
Yeah, that would be great. And we do really appreciate your flexibility in having some of these days that go a little bit later. As you've noticed, they're great for our members to be able to show up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
okay. Would you you guys just kind of, you guys in HR can kind of figure it out, piece out?
Yeah, I think we'll figure it out over email and text.
Okay.
Yeah. Excellent. Hey, thanks everyone
Yeah,
for
thank
a
you.
great day. We're gonna get to reclaim about 53 minutes of our early evening. Appreciate all the work today.
Yeah, thank you. Hope that, people that I want, hope you have a great summer. For those of you who get some break, good, but for those of you that do have a great summer.